Chapter 1938. Ah! Chu Li screamed into the sky. Sadness and anger burned him like a raging flame. Waves of pain surged in his heart, and the world seemed to have changed color. Sun Mingwe stood in front of the divine gate and turned her head to look back. Her eyes kept flashing before his eyes. If it was not to save him, Sun Mingwe would not have activated the secret technique of great light to the extreme and ascended. As a man, not only did he not save her, but he also implicated her ascension. She ascended to the great light surpassing state, but he would not. From then on, they would be separated forever, and it would be difficult for them to meet again. Ah! Chu Li screamed again. His screams were filled with guilt, pain, anger, and sadness. The great sorrow turned into endless murderous intent. In an instant, several God-punishing thunder swords appeared in his mind and continued to appear one after another. In the end, there were more than 20 God-punishing thunder swords, each of which was extremely huge. The difference between the previous God-punishing thunder swords and the current one was like a needle and a sword. These 26 God-punishing thunder swords suddenly shrank and merged into one, turning into a huge sword that was as big as a mountain. Ah! Chu Li screamed again. The huge sword that was as big as a mountain gradually shrank until it was the size of an ordinary dagger. His face flushed and his blue eyes flashed continuously. Then he urged the God-punishing thunder swords to enter his body and travel along his meridians. Wherever the God-punishing thunder swords passed, the power of the heart of Azura that was initially helpless melted like snow in boiling water. In a short while, the God-punishing thunder swords completed a full circulation around his meridians. The power of the heart of Azura completely disappeared, as if it had never existed. The God-punishing thunder swords returned to his mind, but did not disappear. Chu Li appeared at the Great Light Peak in the next moment. On the Great Light Peak, the booming sounds of explosions rang out incessantly. Two Azuras were locked in combat with a snow-white figure. The snow-white figure was graceful and charming with a white veil covering her face. Chu Li was overjoyed and almost thought that it was Sun Mingwe. However, the next moment, he was greatly disappointed. When he saw that it was Li Meng, his heart ached as if it was being twisted by a knife. He stood in the void and suppressed his surging murderous intent. Li Meng waved her fists and shot out rays of white light. She was using the divine light fist. The two Azuras were far weaker than before, clearly injured by Sun Mingwe. Otherwise, even if Li Meng was a heavenly deity, she wouldn't have been able to stop these two Azuras. He could no longer suppress his boiling, killing intent. Bang! Bang! The two Azuras paused, and the red light in their skeletal eyes gradually dimmed. The god-slaying lightning sword pierced through the two red light barriers, directly destroying their souls and life force. Bang! The two Azuras instantly exploded into two balls of red mist. Then, two hearts of Azura appeared and were about to disappear. Bang, 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 bang. One after another, the god-punishing thunder swords hit the two hearts of Azura. Blue light flashed. It was the power of thunder and lightning. Unfortunately, the heart of Azura could not be destroyed. No matter how powerful the god-killing thunder sword was, it could only watch as the heart of Azura turned into two beams of red light that shot into the sky and disappeared. Chu Li's eyes flashed with a deep blue light. He glared at the two hearts of Azura and swore to himself that he would unravel the secret of the heart of Azura and destroy Azura. Masters Jr., where's my master? Li Meng appeared in front of Chu Li. Her face was covered with a white veil, and her bright eyes were shining with tears. She was adjusting her breath and calming her energy. She was concentrating and preparing to receive the empowerment. Master and Masters Jr., suddenly disappeared. Just as she was feeling curious, a supreme force suddenly poured down and became an enlightened master without her knowing. No matter how muddle-headed she was, she knew that her master had met with a mishap. Otherwise, she would not have become an enlightened master. There were only two enlightened masters in the Li dynasty. One was the civil emperor, and the other was the imperial emperor. If her master did not ascend to heaven, no one else would become an enlightened master. If she became an enlightened master, it meant that her master ascended to heaven. She stared at Chu Li with hope. Masters Jr., is my master all right? Chu Li slowly shook his head. She ascended to heaven. How? Li Meng could not believe it. Tears could no longer be contained in Ying's eyes, and they fell. She knew that even if she became an enlightened master, her cultivation level was still far from her master's. How could her master ascend to heaven with such a cultivation level? Chu Li sighed and suppressed all the sadness and pain in his heart. He said calmly, "Fortunately, you became an enlightened master. Otherwise, the Holy Church of Light would be doomed. Even if you became an enlightened master, your future days would not be easy." He did not expect that without the empowerment, Li Meng could become an enlightened master after son Mingyue ascended to heaven. It was obviously because Li Meng had consumed the blood dragon fruit and the sky-soaring pill, and he had helped her improve her skills. He was most worried that Li Meng would not be able to become an enlightened master. An enlightened master in a sect would mean the rise of the sect. Now that the Holy Church of Light was the #1 sect in the Li dynasty, it was a stumbling block. It would become a target for enlightened masters to suppress. Even if they could not attack grandmasters or innate masters, they had ways to weaken the Holy Church of Light. After Sun Mingyue ascended to heaven, the Holy Church of Light would decline. How could he face her? Li Meng wiped her tears. "Masters Jr., how did Master ascend to heaven?" "To save me," Chu Li said. Li Meng's eyes flickered. Chu Li said calmly, "At that time, there were 4 Asuras trying to kill us. After I killed 2 of them, I was heavily injured and suffered a backlash. In order to save me, your master stalled for time. In the end, in order to give me a chance to live, she used the secret technique of great light as her last resort. The 2 Asuras you faced were after your master, and I were heavily injured. Otherwise, you wouldn't have been able to take even 1 hit." Li Meng gritted her teeth as tears streamed down her face. She secretly sighed at her master's foolishness. The last resort of the secret technique of great light was to explode one's body and explode with the strongest force, destroying everything indiscriminately. An enlightened master would need a lot of determination to explode and die. Li Meng definitely did not have such courage. This was the power of love. Master's love was deeply rooted in Masters Jr. Chu. Chu Li said, "Don't cry. It's not like you won't be able to see her. If you work hard, you can still see her after 60 years. If you don't, you'll see her soon." "Masters Jr.," Li Meng said angrily. Chu Li scoffed and said, "Don't think that I'm scaring you. You've seen how terrifying Asuras are. Can you handle them? You haven't found a successor yet. You haven't straightened out the Holy Church of Light yet. If you die just like that, how are you going to face your master and founder once you enter the great light surpassing state?" Li Meng fell silent and slowly nodded. "Leave the matter of the successor to me. I'll help you find one." Chu Li slowly said, "You can handle the matters of the Holy Church of Light yourself. Now that you've become an enlightened master, it's only natural for you to ascend to the position of bishop. There shouldn't be any problems, right?" Li Meng took a deep breath and slowly said, "I'll take care of it. Don't worry, Masters Jr." Chu Li said, If it doesn't work, just call me. I'll transform into Zhao De to help you." As he spoke, he took out a jade pendant from his inner pocket and handed it to her. "Crush this jade pendant, and I'll appear." "Yes." Li Meng took the jade pendant with both hands. Chu Li turned to look at his surroundings. It was a complete mess. This was the Great Light Peak. Many Great Light Peak masters were hiding in the distance. They were secretly looking over, but could not hear the conversation between Chu Li and Li Meng. "Don't let the church members see your weak side." Chu Li gently patted her shoulder and said gently, "Now, the Holy Church of Light's burden is on your shoulders. Your master is shouldering it alone. You can do it too." Chapter 1939. When she thought about how she would be all alone in the vast Great Light Peak without any protection, how she could no longer see her master's cold and concerned gaze, and how she could no longer hear his melodious yet majestic voice, she felt as if her chest was stuffed with cotton, and she could no longer breathe. Chu Li's sorrow were surging from the bottom of his heart, and he could hardly suppress it. He patted her shoulder lightly again. You have me. I'll come and see you every day. You'll get used to it after some time. Your grandmaster had been in isolated cultivation all year round, sometimes for 10 years at a time. Your master was only a grandmaster, but she faced the entire Holy Church of Light on her own and subdued the other heroes. A great teacher produces a great disciple. As her disciple, don't embarrass her. Yes, Li Meng felt the warmth from his big hands. She felt like she was leaning on a big mountain. The panic in her heart slowly dissipated, and she calmed down. Chu Li said, "Let's go back." Li Meng quickly said, "Martial uncle, will you come over tomorrow?" "Yes." Chu Li nodded. Li Meng gently nodded. "That's good. I'll take care of the internal affairs of the cult. I've learned it from my master." Chu Li let out a smile. Li Meng turned around with difficulty, slowly walking towards the light palace. Chu Li stood in the void and watched as her frail figure gradually entered the divine, light basilica. He felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. Looking up at the sky, Sun Mingyue's eyes flashed before his eyes again. Was Sun Mingyue in light-surpassing region doing well? Could she see this side? The churning pain and sorrow in his heart could no longer be suppressed, and he let out a long howl. Dash! The roar was like thunder. The great light peak shook. As his emotions surged, he completely released the heavenly God field. Everyone on Great Light Peak found it difficult to breathe. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on their heads. Their bodies were exceptionally heavy, and not only could they not move, but the invisible force was getting stronger and stronger, forcing them to fall to the ground. Li Meng also felt heavy and suffocating. She poked her head out of the divine hall and raised her voice. "Martial uncle?" Chu Li took a deep breath and came back to his senses. He slowly said, "I'm leaving." He suddenly disappeared. The pressure on Great Light Peak suddenly disappeared. Everyone felt as if a huge mountain had been lifted off their heads. Their bodies felt as light as a feather, as if they could fly. Everyone took deep breaths, greedily inhaling the fresh air. He almost suffocated to death just now. Chu Li returned to the island of the House of Haiduk. Xue Ling floated up to him and looked at him in surprise. Although she was confident in Chu Li, she could not help but worry. She was pleasantly surprised to see him return safely. "Burn that letter." Chu Li waved his hand and said calmly, "I'm going to go into isolated cultivation." "Have the missus and the others returned?" "No," Xue Ling quickly replied. Although Chu Li was calm as usual, as his personal maid, Xue understood him the best. She could feel the unusual aura and the boiling anger in his body. It was like a volcano that was about to erupt at any time. Chu Li nodded slightly, stepped into the bedroom, and sat on the bed. Xue Ling said, "Master," Chu Li said calmly, "Sun Mingyue has ascended to heaven." Xue Ling's eyes widened. Sun Mingyue's cultivation was only inferior to the young master. The young master had once said that other than himself, the other heavenly deities were all inferior to her. Once the two of them joined forces, their might would be astonishing. They actually ascended to the heavens. No wonder young master was so angry. "Who is it?" Xue Ling asked. Chu Li shook his head. "The Azuras. I've already killed them." He had nowhere to vent his anger. Killing the two Azuras did not help at all. It did not lessen his pain and sadness at all. It turned into a flame of anger that burned his heart. The heart of Azura was still there. He felt that there was no need for revenge. Xue Ling sighed. "Master, my condolences. Even if Leader's son has ascended to heaven, we will meet again one day." Chu Li shook his head. If he did not enter the Outland, the two of them would not meet again in the future. With his martial arts skills and the ageless longevity technique, he could live for a long time. Doesn't Goddess Attraction Mountain allow one to enter the Outland? Xueling said, Master, as a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, can enter too? Chu Li's spirit was lifted. No matter how hard he tried, he could not completely suppress his anger. In the absence of clarity, his thoughts were not so thorough and flawless. He did not think of this. It was not difficult to enter the Outland from Goddess Attraction Mountain. He did not want to enter the Outland. He only wanted to protect this world. However, he could enter to see Sun Mingyue and return after that. Xueling saw the change in his expression and secretly sighed in relief. She quickly said, Master, do you have a way to enter? I'll try, Chu Li said. Xueling nodded lightly and left quietly. The next moment, he appeared outside the Basilica of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Zhou Jie was striding out of the basilica. When he saw Chu Li, he quickly bowed. Masters Junior. Chu Li nodded without saying a word. Zhou Jie took 2 steps back and turned to leave. Chu Li looked at his back and shook his head. Zhou Jie was afraid of him now. He avoided him like a snake, afraid that Chu Li would purposely find fault with him. Dong Jianxin was sitting in the basilica. He rubbed his eyebrows and looked worried. Chu Li came in and closed fist saluted. Brother, what are you worried about? It's my disciple. Dong Jianxin shook his head. He's stubborn and wants to leave the mountain. This is not the time to leave the mountain. Chu Li frowned. It's too dangerous. That's what I said, but he wants to leave the mountain to gain experience. Dong Jianxin sighed. He said, he wants to be like you and gain experience. Without enough experience, it's hard to have enough knowledge and comprehension. If his martial arts can't be cultivated to a higher level, I have nothing to say. Chu Li said, I'll go and talk to him. That couldn't be better. Dong Jianxin smiled. His disciple was unusually stubborn. His words did not work, and he insisted on doing things according to him. However, Junior Brother's words were the most effective. He dared not disobey a single order. Chu Li said, Brother, can I enter the Outland? You want to enter the Outland? Dong Jianxin was surprised. Chu Li nodded slowly. I want to go to Great Light Surpassing Land to see Leader Sunday. Dong Jianxin was stunned. His expression changed slightly. Did Leader Sun ascend to heaven? Chu Li said, she joined forces with me to deal with Azura. She used the secret skill of mutual destruction and ascended to heaven. That's why I can see you now, Senior Brother. Leader Sun died to save you, Dong Jianxin said in a low voice. Chu Li nodded. Sigh. Dong Jianxin was filled with emotions but did not know what to say. His city was burdened with a debt of love. His 2 wives and son Jiaozhu were all outstanding beauties, rare women in the world. Now that Sun Jiaozhu had sacrificed her life to save him, one could well imagine his mood. I want to go up and see her, Chu Li said. Dong Jianxin said, I haven't been up there either. I don't know what the situation is like up there. Can I see Leader Sun? Hold the Mountain Master's token and activate the power of the token. Then you can sense the position of the Divine Gate. As he spoke, he took out a black wooden token and handed it to Chu Li, the heart technique to activate. It is the dragon taming technique. Only the enlightened Master's dragon taming technique can activate the power of the token. Chu Li took the token and closed fist saluted. Thank you, Senior Brother. You're not an outsider. Dong Jianxin waved his hand. But you have to be careful. Our martial arts will be weakened when we reach the Outland. We'll only be rank 3, Celestial. There are many masters up there. It's very dangerous. Chu Li smiled. I'll be careful. P.S. Chapter 1940. He turned around and walked out of the main hall, arriving beside the copper bell at the back of the mountain. He activated the mountain chieftain's token, and immediately a strange sensation arose. Through this sensation, he knew the location of the divine gate. With a flash, he disappeared on the spot. In the next moment, he appeared in the void, surrounded by a vast expanse of whiteness. An icy aura surged over from all directions, wanting to devour him. However, his body was strong, and the icy aura could not penetrate it for a while. The art of dragon taming was activated once more, and the mountain chieftain's token clearly indicated that this was the location of the gate of heaven. But apart from the void, there was nothing. The omniscient mirror did not detect anything either. It seemed like the divine gate had disappeared. In a flash, he appeared outside the main hall and stepped into it. Dong Jianxin looked up at him. "Junior Marshal Brother, you haven't gone yet?" He thought that Chu Li could not wait any longer to enter the divine gate. Chu Li frowned. "I can't get in." Dong Jianxin was startled and didn't understand. Chu Li said, "The divine gate isn't open." "It can't be?" Dong Jian said in his heart, "There is indeed a gate of heaven at our place. Every time Shifu goes in and out from there, how could it not be opened? I'll go take a look." As the mountain chieftain, he had the right to enter the realm beyond heaven. Chu Li handed over the token. Dong Jianxin took it and suddenly disappeared. After a while, he returned and said doubtfully, "The gate of heaven is indeed gone. What happened?" Chu Li frowned. Could it be that the Outland has closed the divine gate? "This is the only possibility," Dong Jianxin said slowly. "But why did they close the divine gate? It can't be that they're afraid of us going in, right?" Chu Li asked, "Are you going to give up on this realm?" He then shook his head. Sun Mingyue had entered the divine gate, so it was obvious that the divine gate was still there. It was just that the divine gate of Goddess Attraction Mountain had been sealed, but he really couldn't figure out why. After all, he couldn't be afraid of Azura entering. The Azura realm was a grandmaster, so the only thing they had to guard against in closing the divine gate was the Goddess Attraction Mountain. "Looks like things aren't looking too good for Goddess Attraction Mountain," Chu Li said. Dong Jianxin hastily asked, "What do you mean?" Chu Li said, "If the Goddess Attraction Mountain is fine, the divine gate won't be closed. If he sends
Dong
the call,
Jianxin
he
came
should
to a
return.
sudden realization.
If he did not return,
Our opponents
it
from
meant
Goddess
that the
Attraction
heavenly
Mountain
gates
did
were
it.
indeed closed.
Chu Li suddenly
He
activated
Qi
Qi
Tianwen
in his
over
mind.
and over again.
Through this,
But Zhou Dunley
he could
never
call
appeared.
out to the sky
It
beyond
seems
heaven,
that the divine gate
allowing
is
Zhou
indeed
Dunley to
closed.
sense it.
As
Chu
the
Li
previous
sighed,
mountain
feeling
master
lost.
of Goddess Attraction
He had
Mountain,
originally
Zhou
thought
Dunley
that
had
he
the
would
right
be
to
able to
return
see
to Goddess
Sun
Attraction Mountain
Mingyue
twice a
very
year.
soon.
And he was filled with hope and excitement. He could not wait any longer, but he did not expect that such a thing would happen. He became even more furious, but he could not do anything. No matter how powerful he was, he could not open the divine gate by force. Force it open? As this thought flashed through his mind, he suddenly caught it. Why not try to force it open? Thinking of this, he said in a deep voice, "Senior brother, let me see if I can open it." "What should I do?" Dong Jianxin asked doubtfully. "Break the door by force," Chu Li said. Dong Jianxin looked surprised and then shook his head. "Junior brother, this is not an ordinary gate. It is the gate of heaven." Chu Li smiled and suddenly disappeared. Dong Jianxin also hurriedly disappeared and arrived at the location of the heavenly gate. It was a vast expanse of whiteness, and it was as cold as hell. There was only emptiness around, and nothing else could be seen other than the white fog. Chu Li activated the omniscient mirror to the extreme and waved both of his palms. Suddenly, two golden lights fell and turned into golden palms that slapped the void, making two muffled bang-bang sounds, and a door vaguely appeared in the void. The door was huge, and standing under the door was like two ants standing in front of the door of the imperial house. Bam, 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 bam. Beams of golden light descended from the void, transforming into golden palms that slammed against the faintly discernible giant door. The giant door did not change, and it was still vague, as if it did not exist, but it also seemed to exist, existing in between the real and fake, making it difficult to grasp, and unable to clearly feel it. Chu Li's face was calm, and he just kept slapping. Dong Jianxin secretly smiled bitterly. Junior brother's palm energy was far from his own, and he could not handle any of the palm strikes. It should have consumed a lot of inner energy, but it just happened that he did not need inner energy to use it. It was really extravagant. After 100 palm strikes, the divine gate did not change, and it was still in between the real and fake. After 200 palm strikes, the divine gate was still the same. After 1,000 palm strikes, the divine gate flashed a faint light, and it became more real. After 2,000 palm strikes, the divine gate glowed. The mystery of the scripture of life and death appeared at this time, and the spiritual energy from the outland surged, directly following the heart technique of the supreme titanium scripture, and after one circulation, it turned into the inner energy of the supreme titanium scripture. His palm strikes were fast, and the heart technique was even faster, so it could keep up with the consumption of palm energy. Coupled with the replenishment of the black tortoise shield, his own inner energy was not consumed much, and his inner energy was endless, as if he could keep slapping. Seeing the divine gate glowing, Dong Jianxin was excited, and so he followed suit and slapped. No matter how weak he was still an enlightened master, and his palm energy was tyrannical. The light of the divine gate was getting brighter, and Chu Li's palm strikes were getting faster, wanting to force the divine gate open immediately. However, the light of the divine gate suddenly began to dim, as if there was an invisible force on the other side that was weakening their power, causing the divine gate to become virtual again. Chu Li's expression changed slightly, and his palm strikes became faster. However, the divine gate was still getting dimmer, and finally, like in the beginning, it was hidden in the void, as if it had completely disappeared. Even if Chu Li's palm energy hit, it still could not shine. Bam, 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 bam. Chu Li's face was gloomy, and he still kept slapping. Junior brother. Dong Jianxin felt hopeless, knowing that the opposite side must have been the outland, and once again sealed the divine gate. How could the two of them fight against the entire outland? Chu Li was silent, and he just kept slapping. Sigh. Dong Jianxin stopped and said helplessly, Junior brother, forget it. Chu Li shook his head. I won't give up. Junior brother, why do you have to do this? Dong Jianxin sighed. You also know that it's a waste of effort. After all, there are only two of us. If it really can't work, how about we call a few more people? He knew that Chu Li had killed Azura this time, and several enlightened masters owed him a favor. If he called them over to help open the divine gate, these enlightened masters would not object and take the opportunity to return the favor. Chu Li shook his head. It's useless. If we can't even find more people, how can we do it with just the two of us? Dong Jianxin shook his head. It's better to give up. After cult leader's son enters the great light surpassing state, there's no need to worry. There's still her master. It's better than here. Chu Li's face darkened, and he slowly said, I want to see her. Sigh. Seeing this, Dong Jianxin sighed helplessly and no longer tried to persuade him. He knew that more persuasion was useless, and he could only risk his life to accompany the gentleman, and he also kept slapping. The supreme Vajra palm continued to fall, palm after palm, as if there was no end to it. The golden light in the sky formed a pool of light, shrouding the divine gate. Boom! A loud explosion suddenly sounded, Chapter 1941. Along with the pure spirit chi, there was also light. A dazzling light leaked out from the door, making it impossible to look at it directly. However, Chu Li's omniscient mirror clearly saw 3 figures emerging from the divine gate. Then 9 more figures emerged and pounced on the 3 figures. Chu Li furrowed his brows as he saw Master Zhou Dunli among the 3 figures in front of him. Zhou Dunli's face was pale. His body was still tall and sturdy, but he gave off a weak and frail feeling, as if he could be blown away by a gust of wind. He was supporting 2 old men with white beards and eyebrows, and his expression was incomparably gloomy. The complexions of these 2 old men with white eyebrows and beard were even worse, and they were even weaker than before. The collars under their chins were dyed red with blood, and it was obvious that they were seriously injured and didn't have the strength to defend themselves. Zhou Dunli and the other 2 were battered and exhausted, but the 9 people behind them were full of vigor, completely different from them. Chu Li could tell at a glance that Zhou Dunli and the other 2 were being chased by 9 people. Master, Chu Li gave a fist salute and said. Seeing that it was him, Zhou Dunli heaved a sigh of relief. It's good that it's you. Block them. Yes, Chu Li replied. The 9 elders' body movement technique was extraordinarily fast. Once they got out of the divine gate, they pounced towards Zhou Dunli. They were slightly afraid of Chu Li, who had suddenly appeared in front of Zhou Dunli and the other 2. They stopped abruptly, but had already surrounded them. Dong Jianxin hurriedly ran forward to support Zhou Dunli. Master, are you okay? He won't die any time soon. Zhou Dunli shook his head. He looked at the other 2 white-haired old men. Grandmaster, are you all right? The 2 old men shook their heads. Dong Jianxin cupped his fists and said, Disciple Dong, Jianxin greets the 2 grandmasters. Forget it. There's no need to care about these superficial courtesies. The slightly shorter elder waved his hand. Yes, Dong Jianxin nodded respectfully. Chu Li narrowed his eyes and blocked the 4 of them. Then he glanced at the 9 elders. The sallow-faced old man said in a deep voice, Who are you? If you know what's good for you, get out of the way. Chu Li of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Chu Li said slowly. You're Chu Li? The sallow-faced elder frowned and said, You really live up to your reputation. You're actually able to break the seal. He cursed inwardly. Chu Li's name was extremely well known in the Outland. The people of Beyond Avalon treated this world like how the people of God's capital treated the villagers of a remote mountain village, which they felt that they were insignificant. The martial arts world of the Outland was extremely curious about so many Devis, and they felt that another genius like such an achievement would be enough to appear. For a celestial to be Palace was anxious to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain because of Chu Li. Otherwise, they would have slowly devoured Goddess Attraction Mountain bit by bit and completely digested Goddess Attraction Mountain, allowing Qixing Palace to leap to the next level. They were worried that Goddess Attraction Mountain would summon Chu Li up if it sensed that something was amiss. If that happened, Big Dipper Palace would have to pay an even greater price. Even if they managed to swallow Goddess Attraction Mountain, they might not be able to ascend to the next level. They had sealed the divine gate to prevent the remnants of the Goddess Attraction Mountain from escaping to the lower realm. However, they did not expect that even after sealing the divine gate, they still could not stop them completely. Chu Li had actually broken the seal from this realm. Zhou Dunli and the others had been lying in ambush near the divine gate, so they took advantage of the opening of the seal and escaped while they were still in shock. Zhou Dunli had hidden near the divine gate because Qi Tianwen had sensed Chu Li's presence. He did not expect Chu Li to really do it. Now that he was in a desperate situation, he naturally had to desperately escape. Chu Li slowly asked, Who are you? Zhou Dunli replied, People from Big Dipper Palace. They were the ones who plotted against Goddess Attraction Mountain, which led to its destruction. Chu Li said, "If that's the case, just kill them all." "Be careful," Zhou Dunli said. "Their 7 stars burning heart technique is very powerful. It uses the power of the stars." "Understood." Chu Li nodded. "Chu Li, have you thought it through?" The sallow-faced elder asked. "You're a genius with a bright future ahead of you. Do you want to become a Thunder Pool master like Song Wuji and be unparalleled, or do you want to be buried with Goddess Attraction Mountain?" Chu Li said calmly, "That's not important. I'll kill you first. I want to see how powerful Big Dipper Palace is." The god-punishing thunder sword instantly shot out. Bang, 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 bang. A series of muffled sounds were heard as the 9 celestial beings were sent flying. Their shoulders exploded, causing dust to scatter. The sallow-faced elder shouted, "Go back!" However, his shout was useless. His body was still in midair. Under the powerful impact, he could not help but fly backward. He could not change his direction for a while. Chu Li sneered. He had nowhere to vent his anger, and the people from Big Dipper Palace were the perfect target. The god-punishing thunder sword was not what it used to be. His eyes flashed with a blue brilliance. The 2 Big Dipper Palace elders fell to the ground without a sound. Chapter 1942. Standing in the void, Zhou Dunli and the other 2 were also stunned and in disbelief. They did not expect these 5 to be so ruthless as to blow up the Divine Gate and cut off Chu Li's path to the Outland. This Divine Gate was one of the entrances and exits between the Outland and this world. It was the responsibility of Goddess Attraction Mountain, and the Divine Gate's destruction was Goddess Attraction Mountain's responsibility. The Outland would definitely hold them accountable for failing to protect it. Once they were held accountable, they would send people to rebuild the Divine Gate. Therefore, these 5 could only buy some time by blowing up the Divine Gate. Sacrificing themselves to blow up the Divine Gate in order to buy some time, these 5 were rarely ruthless. It was not wrong for Goddess Attraction Mountain to be destroyed by Qixing Palace. Zhou Dunli and the other 2 shook their heads and sighed. They looked at Chu Li, who had a gloomy expression on his face. Fortunately, God had been kind to Goddess Attraction Mountain and had produced someone like Chu Li. As long as Chu Li was around, there was still hope for Goddess Attraction Mountain to rise again. "Chu Li, what's going on?" Zhou Dunli sighed and asked, "Why do you want to go to the Outland?" He knew his disciples' thoughts. He did not like the Outland and would never go there unless he had no other choice. Something big must have happened for him to be in such a hurry this time. Chu Li turned his head and sighed. "Master, can the Divine Gate be restored after being blown up?" "Yes." Zhou Dunli nodded. "But it will take some time. The Outland will only rebuild it when they know." "How long?" Chu Li asked. Zhou Dunli thought for a while. "At least a month. The Outland is now focused on Azura and will not pay attention to the Divine Gate here. Even if they know it was blown up, they will only investigate and restore the Divine Gate when everything is clear. A month is the shortest amount of time." Chu Li's face became gloomier. Zhou Dunli asked, "Why do you suddenly want to go to the Outland?" "Bishop Sun went to heaven to save me. I want to see her," Chu Li said. "Sun Mingwei?" Zhou Dunli was surprised. "She went to heaven?" Chu Li gritted his teeth and suppressed his pain and anger. Zhou Dunli sighed and nodded. He knew about the emotional entanglement between his disciple and Sun Mingwei. Sun Mingwei went to heaven because of him, so he naturally felt guilty and missed her. He could not wait to see her again to confirm that she was safe. Honorable masters are... Chu Li gave a fist salute. "This is not the place to talk. Let's go back first," Zhou Dunli said. Chu Li nodded. They suddenly returned to the great hall of Goddess Attraction Mountain. Zhou Dunley introduced them to Chu Li and Dong Jianxin. One was Li Yi, and the other was Tseng Qingshan. Both of them were seniors of the immortal attraction mountain. Both of them had a lifespan of 600 years. Everyone sat in the main hall and chatted. Zhou Jia personally served tea and stood at the side. After Li Yi and Tseng Qingshan consumed the pills from Goddess Attraction Mountain, they looked much better. Chu Li could tell that they were severely injured and needed to go into isolated cultivation to recuperate. They would not be able to fight for a while. Zhou Dunley took a sip of tea and revealed a look of enjoyment, his expression completely relaxed. When he arrived at Goddess Attraction Mountain, he felt completely safe because his disciple, Chu Li, was here. With Chu Li around, the people from Qixing Palace would not dare to come and seek revenge. Even if they did, they would not be able to return. Li Yi and Tseng Qingshan also wore expressions of enjoyment on their faces. They hadn't felt so at ease in a long time. Having such a powerful disciple was indeed a blessing for the sect. Zhou Dunley put down his teacup and said gently, "Chu Li, you don't have to worry about Cult Leader Sunday." Chu Li looked like he was listening attentively. Although Goddess Attraction Mountain is #1 in this world, far surpassing the Holy Church of Light in terms of reputation and status, in the Outland, it's the exact opposite. Light Surpassing State is far superior to Goddess Attraction Mountain. Zhou Dunley said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Zhou Dunley said, "Since she's a disciple of Light Surpassing State, there's nothing to worry about. Moreover, she's an enlightened master. After entering Light Surpassing State, she'll be an elite and will receive preferential treatment. Moreover, Light Surpassing State's inheritance is orderly, and there are masters and grandmasters looking after her." Chu Li slowly said, "I'm relieved then." Dong Jianxin asked curiously, "Master, is Goddess Attraction Mountain that far from Light Surpassing State?" Zhou Dunley smiled bitterly. Just like the difference between Goddess Attraction Mountain and ordinary sects in this world, Light Surpassing State is one of the few major sects in the Outland. They're located in the 9th sky, while we're only located in the 6th sky. 9th sky? 6th sky? Dong Jianxin was even more curious. Zhou Dunley said, "All the buildings in the Outland float in the air. Depending on the status, the height at which they float varies, and the spiritual energy is also different. The higher the sect's status, the higher the location, and the purer the spiritual energy. From top to bottom, there are 9 skies. Goddess Attraction Mountain is located in the 6th sky, and Light Surpassing State is located in the 9th sky." These secrets should not have been leaked, but at this point, it did not matter anymore. Their sect had been destroyed, and if they did not explain it clearly, they might not have the chance to. Letting Chu Li know a little more would only benefit him. Only the 6th day? Dong Jianxin was surprised. Chapter 1943. Zhou Dunley hurriedly added, "But you must be careful not to offend the Great Light Surpassing Realm. They are from the 9 Heavens sect, and it is inevitable that they will have some temper. You must bear with it. If you really offend them, you will suffer." Dong Jian thought, "Master, is the Great Light Surpassing Realm very overbearing?" In the 9 Heavens sect, it is the only sect where women are in charge. Zhou Dunley sighed and said, "It is inevitable that they will be a bit tough, or else they would have been swallowed long ago. They do not pretend to speak to men." "I will be careful," Chu Li said slowly. He wished he could grow a pair of wings and fly to the Outland to see Sun Mingyue. Just seeing her once would be enough, and it would also ease his pain and longing. Dong Jian thought, "I must be careful when I go to the 100,000 Hills." "Right, Chu Li, I almost forgot to ask." Zhou Dunley said, "Did Cult Leader's son ascend to save you? What opponent did he encounter? Azura?" "I think it was Great Azura. Chu Li's face darkened again as he thought of the situation. The cultivation of those four Asuras was too strong, far exceeding the first rank celestial, and far beyond the level of ordinary Asuras. They were not in the same rank, and there was a high chance that they were great Asuras. Great Asuras? Zhou dumbly frowned and sighed. Logically speaking, when great Asuras descend, a supreme celestial should descend. Otherwise, a world will be destroyed. Li Yi and Sun Qingshan nodded. Li Yi said coldly, "The Outland is in a mess now, and no one is dealing with such an important matter. Or maybe they did it on purpose." Zhou Dunley's expression was solemn as he shook his head. The elders of the Outland have a very contradictory attitude towards Chu Li. On one hand, they want to rely on you, but on the other hand, they are on guard. So it seems like they are doing things in a contradictory way. You must be careful of them. At first, the elders of the Outland wanted to get rid of Chu Li. He was an anomaly, a bad example. If everyone cultivated to become gods, the dignity of the Outland would be gone, and the world would be out of control. Although it was said that the Outland allowed one to cultivate to become a god, it was just a saying. They had to find an excuse to get rid of him. Later on, when the Elder Council saw that he was able to deal with the Asuras and kill them like slaughtering chickens, they wanted to borrow his strength to attack the Asuras. They even thought of using him to get rid of him later. They treated him like a precious sword, using him to their heart's content before destroying him. Later on, perhaps it was because Chu Li had advanced too quickly and surpassed the Grandmaster's control, so they became vigilant and wanted to kill him. They wanted to use the Great Asura to get rid of him. As long as Chu Li is here, Goddess Attraction Mountain can't be destroyed. Sai, it's easier said than done. Li Yi shook his head. Zheng Qingshan said, "Don't get your hopes up. One person's power is limited. To rebuild Goddess Attraction Mountain, Qixing Palace would have to be destroyed. However, Qixing Palace would become stronger after absorbing the benefits of Goddess Attraction Mountain. They might even produce a powerful figure who could stop Chu Li. Let's take it one step at a time," Li Yi said. Chu Li stood above the ice pool and released his enlightened god field. His mind was much calmer now, thinking about how he would be able to see Sun Mingwe soon. He was no longer angry or in pain. Logically speaking, the most important thing to do was to cultivate in isolation. The power obtained from killing Grand Asuras was extremely powerful. He might be able to condense the Chakram Pagoda to the 8th floor and double his cultivation level. However, it would not be appropriate to cultivate in isolation without seeing Sun Mingyue. He could only go into isolation after seeing Sun Mingyue. The next moment, 3 spirit tigers suddenly appeared in the void in front of him. The male spirit tiger was tall and burly, while the female spirit tiger was petite and exquisite. The small spirit tiger, the size of a puppy, lay on the back of the female spirit tiger and looked at Chu Li curiously. Chu Li fist saluted and told them about his intention to use the divine gate to enter the Outland. The 3 spirit tigers were carefully sizing him up. The male spirit tiger suddenly spat out a ray of light that directly hit between Chu Li's eyebrows. There was no chance for him to dodge. Chu Li was shocked. It seemed that he was still far from being a supreme spirit beast. It would be difficult for him to fight against it. "Don't forget what you promised." The male spirit tiger's majestic voice rang in his mind. Then, the 3 spirit tigers suddenly disappeared. Chu Li said in a low voice, "I won't forget." He focused his senses to sense where the ray of light was. It had already entered the void of his mind. It was a giant glowing door that was as tall as the Buddhas in the void of his mind. When he focused his mind and got closer to the light door, he suddenly had a strange feeling that the light door was somewhere in the void. He thought about it and finally decided not to bring the purple dragon and the Xianyuan tortoise along. This time, he was not going to the Outland to fight. He was only going to see Sun Mingyue. Once he saw Sun Mingyue, he would immediately return and quickly cultivate in isolation to deal with the next attack from Grand Azuras. He suddenly disappeared from the sky above the ice pool in a flash. The next moment, he appeared in front of a vast, giant door. Standing in front of this door, he felt like he was standing in front of a towering mountain. He was as small as an ant. Chapter 1944. Chu Li originally planned to use the heavenly demon scripture to hide his identity and come and go quietly. However, after some thought, how could someone who could enter the divine gate from the 100,000 hills not attract the attention of the Outland? If he used the heavenly demon scripture, it would be easier to ruin things. He might as well use his original appearance. His vision blurred as if he had used void diversion. Then, he found himself in a wide square about the size of a football field. The square, paved with white jade, was spotless. There were some strange patterns carved on the jade, exuding a hazy brilliance. The hazy brilliance gathered into one and formed a hazy light pool. Chu Li bathed in this light pool, and the surrounding void was locked. All of his inner energy and spiritual energy were locked. Chu Li did not panic. This was obviously a strange formation, one that was more advanced than the 10 ultimate vitality lock formation. He had to study it carefully. If he could set it up, it would be best to protect the mountain gate. The omniscient mirror lost its effect here. Everything around him was white, and he could only see the square. When he turned around, the simple stone gate was closed, and there was no longer any hazy brilliance. 2 cattail hassocks were placed in the middle of the white jade square. 2 middle-aged men sat with their legs crossed. Their eyes were slightly closed, and their aura was restrained, as if they were dead. Chu Li came closer. The 2 men suddenly opened their eyes. Their eyes flashed like lightning. They looked up at Chu Li with a strange look. Chu Li's omniscient mirror could not see the situation outside the square, but he could see what they were thinking. This was the divine gate that led to the 100,000 hills and the spirit beast surpassing boundary. Why would anyone come here? The Outland and the spirit beast surpassing boundary had an oath. Spirit beasts could not fight in the Outland. Therefore, spirit beasts would only be bullied when they entered the Outland. After a long time, no spirit beasts came to the Outland. The 2 men guarding the gate were just decorations. They almost never encountered spirit beasts or people. Therefore, they treated it as an isolated place. They did not expect to meet people. Chu Li fist saluted and said, "Seniors, how do I get to the great light surpassing boundary?" "Who are you, and why do you want to go to the great light surpassing boundary?" The thin middle-aged man floated up and carefully looked at Chu Li. "You need an identity jade disc to enter the divine gate. Otherwise, you will not be able to move." "I'm Chu Li," Chu Li said. "Chu Li." The skinny middle-aged man nodded and took out a palm-sized jade pendant from his pocket. He drew a few strokes on the circular jade pendant with his index finger and handed it to Chu Li. "The great light surpassing state is on 9th heaven. You need to climb up the sky stairway. Whether you can go up or not depends on your own ability." Chu Li took the jade pendant and glanced at the words on it. There were only 2 simple words, Chu Li, written on it. Other than that, there was nothing else. There was a faint layer of brilliance flowing around it, as if it contained spring water. Chu Li looked at the 2 of them in surprise. He didn't expect that he would be able to travel through the sky beyond heaven so easily. He thought that he would be interrogated in detail, and from the looks of it, they didn't seem to have heard of his name. After thinking about it, he understood that no matter how famous he was, he was still in the lower realm. It was just like how the people in the divine capital rarely paid attention to an expert in the countryside. Don't tell me you're going to find trouble with great light surpassing state. Another slightly chubby middle-aged man said, That's the Nine Heavens sect. It's best if you don't ask for trouble. Chuli shook his head. I'm going to meet a friend. You have a friend in great light surpassing state. The two of them looked at each other and smiled. Who is it? A newly ascended one, Chuli replied. Sun Mingyue? The two of them hurriedly asked. Chuli nodded. The thin middle-aged man smiled. So it's Sun Mingyue's friend. Walk up the stairway behind you until you reach the top. Then you'll see a plaza like this one. There will be someone there to show you the way, but it's not an easy path. If your cultivation level isn't high enough, you won't be able to ascend to the 9 heavens. Thank you. Chuli fist saluted. Sun Mingyue had just ascended, but she was already so famous. It seemed that great light surpassing state was really famous. The thin middle-aged man waved his hand and smiled. You're welcome. It's said that Sun Mingyue is a peerless beauty. She's rare in this world, and I don't know how many young talents are eyeing her. The chubby middle-aged man sighed. She's also a disciple of great light surpassing state. It's said that she's an enlightened master who ascended. She has a bright future ahead of her. At the very least, she'll be the wife of an overlord. She was born with the phoenix destiny. I'm afraid we won't even have the chance to see her. The thin middle-aged man shook his head. I've only heard of her. Oh, right. Young Master Chu, have you seen Sun Mingyue's real face? Chu Li was slightly annoyed, but he maintained a calm smile. I have. She's indeed beautiful. What's your relationship with Sun Mingyue? The chubby middle-aged man asked. Neither of them thought about romantic relationships. Even if they did, it would be different in the Grand Master. How could a disciple of great light surpassing state, a first-rank celestial being, interact with ordinary celestials? Moreover, Chuli looked heroic, but not extremely handsome. With Sun Mingyue's status, she would not be tempted. Chuli smiled. She's just an ordinary friend. Chapter 1945. As he entered the mist, his vision suddenly slowed down as he arrived at a plaza. It was about the same size as the previous plaza, but there was no formation to seal off his cultivation level. Several huge white jade screens were placed around the plaza, and on the screens were drawings of topographical and architectural drawings. The locations of various sects were marked on the screens, as well as their introductions. At first glance, there were only a few strokes, but upon closer inspection, there were towering mountains with steep peaks. Dense trees could be vaguely seen in the strokes, giving off a majestic aura. Chu Li imprinted everything in his mind at a glance, but he did not know how big the outland was. The territories of each layer were not as big as the world he was in, so it was useless to just look at the topographical maps. He passed through the plaza and headed north, once again stepping onto the stairway to heaven. The stairway to heaven here was narrower and steeper than the one below. The first step was about 25 to 26 meters long, and the steps were half a meter high. It was extremely wide, so even though it was steep, there was no sense of danger, and one would not fall. The second step was narrower than the first, only 13 to 14 meters long, and the steps were 1 meter high. Without light body technique, it was difficult to walk far. He lowered his head and hurried up to the clouds in the sky. He climbed to the third step in one go, which was similar to the second. It was still a plaza, and there was a wide screen with a map on it, but it was difficult to really identify the path based on this map. The third step was even narrower and steeper, and those with weaker light body technique would not be able to climb it. Chu Li could already feel that the third layer was higher than the second, and the stairway to heaven was longer, so it would take longer to climb. The fourth, fifth, and sixth levels all confirmed his speculation. Each level was higher and harder to climb, and the spiritual energy became denser and purer, making it more powerful. He did not see Goddess Attraction Mountain on the map of the sixth heaven. There were a few middle-aged men in the plaza, sitting in a corner, meditating. Chu Li Fist saluted a man who had just opened his eyes and smiled. "Senior, I would like to ask you a question." "There's no harm in saying it." The middle-aged man was handsome and radiant. Chu Li said, "I heard that Goddess Attraction Mountain is on the sixth heaven. Why can't I see it on the map?" He saw through the middle-aged man's thoughts. Since he was able to appear on sixth heaven at such a young age, he was definitely not an ordinary person. He had a bright future ahead of him, and there was no need to offend him. Immortal Attraction Mountain. The middle-aged man floated up as light as a feather. He stood up straight and swept a glance at the white jade screen. He shook his head and said, "They've been exterminated." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. Sect annihilation? That was impossible, right? Could it be that the sect was so easily annihilated? The middle-aged man chuckled and said, "Looks like you're new here, right? It's not that easy to destroy a sect, especially a sect on sixth heaven." Unfortunately, Goddess Attraction Mountain was unlucky and was ambushed by the Seven-Star Palace when they were dealing with the Azuras. One wrong move led to the destruction of the sect. What a pity. Don't tell me that the Elders Guild doesn't care? Chu Li frowned. Won't such behavior increase Azura's prestige? How can the Elders Guild interfere in this kind of sect feud? The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "We can only blame the Immortal Attraction Mountain for being careless." The Immortal Attraction Mountain had a golden dragon protecting the sect. Unfortunately, it was still destroyed. How could the sect still be annihilated with the golden dragon? Could it be that the golden dragon still kept its promise and didn't attack in the Outland? Chu Li asked. The middle-aged man nodded and said, "Spirit beasts can't take the initiative to attack in the Outland. They can attack if they're scolded, but they can attack if someone takes the initiative to attack them. Most importantly, the golden dragon was heavily injured and was in isolated cultivation to heal. The Seven-Star Palace took this opportunity to destroy Goddess Attraction Mountain." "I see." Chu Li frowned and said, "Weren't they afraid that the golden dragon would take revenge?" "That's a matter for the future." The middle-aged man shook his head and said, "Besides, the golden dragon was only protecting Goddess Attraction Mountain. Now that Goddess Attraction Mountain is gone, the golden dragon won't take revenge. It's such a pity. Goddess Attraction Mountain still has a chance to ascend to the first heaven." Chu Li nodded. The middle-aged man gave a fist salute and turned around to glide down. Chu Li continued to climb up. In one go, he climbed through 7 to 8 levels until he reached the 9th level. The stairway to heaven on the 9th level was the narrowest. It was 2 meters wide and 10 meters tall. One could only use light body technique to climb it. Moreover, although the spiritual energy on the stairway was pure, it was too pure. There was a pressure in the void that descended from the sky. Walking on the stairway to heaven felt like one would fall at any time. This did not hinder Chu Li at all. When he arrived at the plaza, he used the map and headed straight to the west. After leaving the plaza, the ground that he stepped on was not the void, but real land. His omniscient mirror could see hundreds of miles away. He could clearly see that the land was floating in the void, but there was an invisible force that stabilized the land and made it motionless. It was no different from the land in Chu Li's world. Chapter 1946. Yo. After watching Liang Yueying disappear, Chu Li shook his head and sighed. The longer the history of a sect, the more solid it was. There was a reason why it could be passed down. However, seeing that son Mingyue was indeed in light-surpassing state and seemed to be doing well, Chu Li was relieved. He had achieved his goal and just wanted to see son Mingyue again. Suppressing his longing for son Mingyue, he turned his thoughts elsewhere. Not only did he see light-surpassing state on the map of Ninth Heaven Square, but he also saw two other sects, the Taiching sect and the elusive Ninth Heaven sect. He originally thought that the Taiching sect was an extinct sect. Even if there were people, there would be very few of them. He never expected that it was also a sect on Ninth Heaven and had a position in the realm beyond heavens. In that case, Xiao Qi and Xiao Shi were also disciples of Ninth Heaven sect. Lu Yurong was also a disciple of Ninth Heaven sect. His luck was really good. Even the legacies of the women around him were so powerful. No matter how he thought about it, the Goddess Attraction Mountain was the worst, and it had even been destroyed. There was originally an Amethyst Mountain, but he did not see it in the realm beyond heaven. Could it be that there was no legacies there, or perhaps there were other legacies? The light-surpassing state was quite mysterious, as it could block his connection with son Mingyue. If there was no obstruction, he should be able to talk to son Mingyue in his mind, and would not need Liang Yueying to do it. He sat at the peak of the mountain and began to condense the wheel pagoda. Endless power surged into the wheel pagoda, and the condensation of the wheel pagoda was complete. It was condensed to the 9th level in one go, and was only a little bit away from completing the condensation of the 9th level. Unfortunately, it was just a little bit away. When Chu Li opened his eyes, he shook his head and sighed. The harvest from killing the 4 great Asuras was beyond imagination. If there was another great Asura, he might be able to complete the condensation. After all, the power needed for the 8th and 9th levels was probably the sum of the power needed for the previous 7 levels. He stared at the mountain where light-surpassing state was. It was like a giant dragon hovering in the void, ready to fly away at any time. An invisible force shrouded the mountain. His omniscient mirror could not see through it and could only sense danger. It was better to stay away. Clearly, this formation was mysterious and powerful enough to threaten his life. Suddenly, 4 figures floated over from afar and landed at the foot of the mountain. The group of 4 raised their heads and looked at the mountain range where the great light surpassing territory was located. The person in the lead was a handsome young man in a spotless white robe. He held a folding fan in his hand and waved it lightly. The fan's ribs were made of white jade, and the fan's surface was made of natural silk. Beside the handsome youth were 3 middle-aged men. Their appearances were almost exactly the same, and their expressions were also exactly the same, calm and tranquil. "Young master, this is the great light surpassing domain. Don't be rude when you enter," a middle-aged man said calmly. "Don't lose your chance. Save it." The handsome young man closed his folding fan and said with a smile, "Don't worry, third uncle. I'm determined to win Miss Sun's heart. A heavenly deity seed at such a young age. This type of person definitely cannot be underestimated. Her will is firm, definitely not ordinary. It will be extremely difficult to move her heart. Young master should be prepared." The middle-aged man calmly said. The handsome young man chuckled and said, "I'm not good at anything else, but I'm good at figuring out women. Don't worry, I'll definitely take her down and give our dragon slaying mountain a great help. Let's talk after we meet her. I heard that Miss Sun is very difficult to meet," the middle-aged man said. The handsome young man waved his folding fan and smiled confidently. "She'll have to give our dragon slaying mountain some face. She won't refuse to meet us. We're not those small sects." "It's better to be careful," the middle-aged man said. As they spoke, two young men in blue robes appeared out of thin air and floated in front of the four of them. They looked at them calmly. The middle-aged man gave a fist salute. Young leader of dragon-slaying mountain, Nangong, he is here to meet Miss Sun Mingyue. The two young men in blue robes were handsome. They calmly glanced at Nangong, and did not show any unusual expressions. The round-faced young man said, "Young leader Nangong, our junior sister Sun is in isolated cultivation and will not see any guests. Please forgive her." Isolated cultivation? Nangong, he frowned. Hasn't Miss Sun recovered her cultivation level? Why is she still in isolated cultivation? The other young man in blue robes smiled. Junior sister Sun is a genius in martial arts. After entering the surpassing state, she had an epiphany, and her cultivation level has increased greatly. She has advanced a level in the Great Light Scripture, and is currently consolidating her cultivation level. Congratulations! Nangong, he gave a fist salute and smiled. His gaze became more eager. When will Miss Sun come out of isolated cultivation? Well, we can't be sure. It could be a day or two, a month or two, or even a year or two, the round-faced young man said with a smile. The round-faced young man smiled and said, "Young mountain chieftain can wait here, or you can come back another day. Then I'll go back and wait for Miss Sun's news." Nangong, he gave a fist salute and chuckled. "Then I wish Miss Sun a great improvement in her martial arts." "Thank you, young leader." The round-faced young man gave a fist salute and smiled. Nangong, he nodded and left. The two young men in blue robes looked at each other and floated away into the void. Chu Li could see the thoughts of the two young men in blue robes. Sun Mingyue had indeed advanced a level in the Great Light Scripture, and then went into isolated cultivation. It was not a lie or an excuse. Nangong, he and the three elders floated away, but went halfway up the mountain where Chu Li was. They stopped in a forest and found a rock to sit on. They had traveled a long way and had not rested yet. "Young leader, it seems that we have to wait." The middle-aged man, who spoke earlier, frowned. "I'm afraid that everyone will receive the news and rush over." "So what if they rush over?" Nangong, he scoffed. "I'll definitely get the beauty." "Young master, don't be careless." The middle-aged man frowned. "Miss Sun seems to be a genius with a promising future. Even if we can't become husband and wife, we must be friends and not enemies." "Third uncle, you worry too much." "Of course, I know." Nangong, he laughed. "I only heard that Miss Sun is a rare beauty. It's intolerable for such a talented and beautiful woman to be taken advantage of by another man. So, I will definitely do my best. Rumors can't be trusted. Maybe it's just an exaggeration." The middle-aged man shook his head. "Young master, you don't have to expect too much. Otherwise, you'll be too disappointed." "I hope she's exaggerating." His last sentence was a soft sigh, and his frown deepened. With young master's character, if he met other young heroes who came to visit Sun Mingyue, he would definitely be hostile and even cause trouble. It would not be good to make enemies for no reason. Although Dragon-Slaying Mountain was strong, it was not invincible. However, it was useless to persuade him now. He could only hope that he would not be so unlucky as to meet a young hero who came to visit Sun Mingyue. Chu Li sat on the top of the mountain like a stone that was completely integrated with the mountain. They could not find him, but he could spy on their thoughts. Chu Li was quite annoyed with Nangong. He naturally did not have a good impression of a guy who had ideas about his woman. Just then, a white shadow flashed. Sun Mingyue appeared in the void. Her clothes were as white as snow, and her face was covered with a white veil. The breeze gently fluttered her clothes. She was dressed the same as in the original world. Chapter 1947. When Chu Li met her bright eyes, the pain and longing that he had been suppressing surged up. He forced a smile. Sun Mingyue took off her veil and revealed her beautiful face. She pursed her lips and smiled. "How did you get up here?" Chu Li replied, "There's a divine gate in the 100,000 hills. I came from there. How's the great light surpassing state?" "It's much easier." Sun Mingyue turned and sat beside him. Her fragrance wafted into his nose. All of Chu Li's suppressed thoughts dissipated, and he became relaxed again. One of the 9 heaven sects, the great light surpassing state, is so impressive. Chu Li shook his head and sighed. Not like Goddess Attraction Mountain. Their sect has just been destroyed, and the divine gate was blown up by the 7 Stars Palace. There's such a thing. Sun Mingyue was surprised. "I've been in isolated cultivation, so I didn't know, but that's something that happened on 6th heaven." "That's true." Chu Li said. "Li Meng took over as an enlightened master and became the bishop. The Holy Church of Light is safe. Don't worry." Sun Mingyue said softly, "Li Meng has become an enlightened master. The Holy Church of Light won't be able to cause trouble. I'm not worried about her. I'm worried about you. We've encountered great Asuras." Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingyue said, "There will be more great Asuras looking for you. When that time comes," she frowned slightly. The 4 great Asuras had almost killed them. Now that she had arrived at the great light surpassing state, she could not descend to help Chu Li in a short time. He had to deal with it alone. They had personally experienced the power of great Asuras. There was no way they could withstand it. Chu Li smiled. "My cultivation level has improved. I can handle it. I've asked Master and the others to go to the Elders Guild and ask them why they didn't send Celestials to stop the great Asuras." Sun Mingyue frowned. "But the Elders Guild is slow and hasn't answered. I'm afraid we can't count on them." Chu Li said, "I sensed something was wrong. I hid in the 100,000 hills. The great Asuras won't dare to go there." Sun Mingyue smiled. Chu Li could sense that Sun Mingyue's cultivation level had indeed improved tremendously. It was not just a small improvement, but an earth-shattering improvement. Clearly, advancing to the next level of the Great Light Scripture had greatly benefited her. Sun Mingyue looked at him with her clear eyes and said softly, "You don't have to feel guilty. It's a blessing in disguise for me. After using the secret technique of great light and ascending to the heavens, my understanding of the Great Light Scripture has improved. That's why I have my current cultivation level and status." Chu Li sighed. Only by sacrificing oneself can one understand the light. Only by experiencing it personally can one understand its wonders. That's right. Sun Mingyue smiled. Chapter 1948. "Young master, it can't be that bad, right?" The middle-aged man laughed. "Is it that bad?" But a divine realm expert from the lower realm. Although his martial arts are extraordinary, he can't be so presumptuous in the heavens beyond heaven. This is not the lower realm. "Third uncle, you guys..." Nangong, he shook his head. "When it comes to martial arts, you guys are good enough, but your knowledge is lacking. Don't immerse yourself in practicing all day long. Put more thought into it. Young master, can we really not provoke him?" The 3 middle-aged men were a little embarrassed. The 3 brothers' names were simple: Zhao San, Zhao Si, and Zhao Wu. The 3 of them were born of the same mother and were all martial arts fanatics. They usually did not care about anything except practicing. As long as Nangong, he came out, the 3 of them would accompany him. They did not care about anything else, as long as they ensured that no one bullied Nangong. So most of the time, they immersed themselves in practicing and were absent-minded about their surroundings. "Third uncle, You only think he is a divine realm expert, but you forgot his most important identity. Nangong, he shook his head and sighed, helplessly. These three uncles could not change. They could only be bodyguards and could not take on big responsibilities. Disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain, Zhao Si laughed. But Goddess Attraction Mountain has been destroyed by Qixing Palace. Although Qixing Palace's means are a little despicable, it is indeed effective. Now that Goddess Attraction Mountain has been destroyed, it is useless even if the Golden Dragon comes back. It can't attack Qixing Palace. Being a disciple of Goddess Attraction Mountain is not the key. The key is his method of becoming a divine realm expert. Nangong, he said, he is not a divine realm expert like other divine realm experts. He cultivated himself to become a divine realm expert. The three middle-aged men were originally laughing, but when they heard this, their expressions changed slightly. Nangong, he snorted. Third uncle, fourth uncle, fifth uncle, do you know how powerful he is now? To be able to cultivate himself to become a divine realm expert. He is indeed not to be underestimated. We don't have that ability. I heard that he was tortured a lot in the past. He could even withstand the heavenly thunder strike. Song Wuji lost face. The three of them began to discuss among themselves. Nangong, he frowned and waved his hand. Uncles, you are talking about it, but you are not getting to the point. Young Mountain Lord, there's nothing wrong with him becoming an Empyrean god. Zhao Sen laughed. The most important thing to become a divine realm deity is to be able to freely enter and exit the human realm beyond heavens. As long as you find the divine gate, you can enter and exit at will, unlike the sealed divine realm deities who can only ascend and abandon their original bodies. Nangong, he said. The three of them were startled and slowly nodded. Now that they thought about it, they didn't think it was anything special. They were celestials, and they didn't care much about the lower realms. They didn't want to go to that kind of place, just like how the people of the divine capital didn't want to go to remote villages. Nangong, he snorted and said, "This is a great advantage. Think about it. If he suddenly rushes over, beats us up, and then returns to the mortal world, what should we do?" The three of them thought about it and scratched their heads. If they wanted to descend to the lower realms, they would have to pay a huge price. It was really not worth it. Nangong, he said, "What's worse is that his martial arts are so powerful that it's useless to beat us. Now that the immortal attracting mountain is gone, there's no way for us to vent our anger. We can only endure it. Uncles, don't you feel aggrieved?" It's quite infuriating. The three of them nodded. It was really unbearable to be beaten up and not be able to retaliate. Nangong, he said, "So don't provoke this guy. Do you think he's a good person?" Since he took the initiative to provoke them, it was obvious that he was not a good person. If something went wrong, he would start a fight. A wise man knew better than to fight when the odds were against him. The four of them were no match for Chu Li, so it was better for them to stay away from him, so that they wouldn't have to hold back their anger. The three of them shook their heads. "All right then, young Hill Master, let's stay away from him. We can't touch Miss Sunday," Zhao Sen said helplessly. "This Miss Sun must be very beautiful. It's a pity that her face is covered, so we can't see her clearly." "I've seen her. She's really beautiful." Nangong, he sighed and shook his head. "Unfortunately, she's already taken. This Chu Li has good luck with women." "Right. I heard that the guy from Spirit Wonder Mountain also wants to come and see Miss Sun." Deng Lu naturally won't let go of this opportunity. Zhao Sen scoffed. "If Spirit Wonder Mountain wasn't further away, I'm afraid he would have come." "That's very good." Nangong, he laughed. "This time, we'll teach Deng Lu a lesson and break his spirit." "Master, you're not thinking of ambushing Deng Lu, are you?" Zhao Si shook his head. "We can't beat Spirit Wonder Mountain. It's better not to provoke him, so that we don't get beaten up again. They remembered the last time they provoked Deng Lu. In the end, Deng Lu turned against them and beat them up. Thinking about it now, they could still faintly feel their internal organs aching. Their martial arts were not as good as Deng Lu and his protectors. No matter how good an ambush was, they would still be beaten up. Nangonghe rolled his eyes at him. Fourth uncle, am I that stupid? Don't think of me as the same as you, okay? Hee, I'm just afraid that young Hillmaster will take things too hard. Zhao Si laughed. Sometimes we have to swallow our anger even if we can't. Who asked us to be inferior to others? We can only take it. That's right. Then we have to train harder and no longer take it. Zhao Wu said in a deep voice. Nangonghe angrily pointed to his temple and said, Use your brain, wisdom. He scoffed. This time, we'll set a trap for Deng Lu and make him jump into it obediently. How do we do that? The three men's eyes suddenly lit up. Nangonghe laughed. Isn't Deng Lu strong in martial arts? He's bullying us with his strong martial arts. Then we'll find someone stronger to teach him a lesson. We'll kill him with a borrowed knife. We'll definitely see him in a sorry state. When he thought of this, he could not help but feel proud. His smile grew wider. How do we kill with a borrowed knife? The three men hurriedly asked. Nangonghe said, Let Deng Lu fight Chu Li. Let Chu Li help us teach Deng Lu a lesson. Deng Lu is not stupid. Young Hillmaster, he's also a tactful person. Once he sees Chu Li's strong martial arts, he'll definitely retreat and not try to be brave. With his arrogance, he can't wait to defeat Chu Li. Once he sees Chu Li, he'll definitely not let him go. Nangonghe scoffed. Find out the news and inform him that Chu Li has arrived. Okay. Zhao Sen nodded. Chu Li stood on the peak of the mountain, shaking his head and laughing. None of these people were easy to deal with. They made the best use of everything. When they saw that they could not win, they immediately retreated. Then, they used themselves to teach their opponents a lesson. They were able to restrain their own pride. Sun Mingwei chuckled. Why do you bother to scare them? Chu Li said, If I don't scare them away, there'll be endless trouble in the future. If too many people come, it'll affect your reputation. No matter how beautiful a woman was, if there were too many people chasing after her, it would inevitably give people the impression that she was impetuous and famous. It would damage her reputation. Sun Mingwei shook her head. I'll be in isolated cultivation soon. I won't see anyone. Chu Li said, If you don't cut off their thoughts, it'll be difficult for you to be in isolated cultivation. Just leave it to me. Did he go to the realm beyond heaven? Dong Jianxin asked. Chu Li nodded. Dong Jianxin hurriedly asked, Has our immortal attraction mountain really been destroyed? Chu Li nodded again. Dong Jianxin sighed and shook his head. I never thought that the goddess attraction mountain would really be destroyed. Chu Li nodded. Dong Jian thought to himself, We can only blame the Qixing Palace for being too cunning. They took advantage of the absence of the golden dragon to take action. With the golden dragon around, they definitely wouldn't be able to succeed. Chu Li asked, Where's the golden dragon now? I don't know. Dong Jianxin shook his head and sighed. He wasn't even in the realm beyond heaven when he was in seclusion. He might be in the 100,000 hills or the higher realm beyond heaven. No one knows, but this is a profound lesson. We can't rely too much on the golden dragon. Chu Li nodded. Dong Jianxin continued, but we can only blame our bad luck. We have 1 or 2 golden dragons on our side. The people from Qixing Palace have no chance at all. Chu Li asked, What does Master think? Should we go and deal with Qixing Palace now? Master wants you to slow down, junior brother. Dong Jianxin sighed. He said that this matter can't be rushed. Even if Qixing Palace is destroyed, Goddess Attraction Mountain can't recover its vitality. The scattered disciples of Goddess Attraction Mountain won't be able to recover from their injuries in a short period of time. They won't be able to withstand the attack. Chuli frowned. After a while, when Azura invades on a large scale, the Elders' Society may not be able to tolerate the sects killing each other. Then we'll wait for the future. We can't always be unable to deal with Azura, right? Dong Jianxin said. Chuli said, then we'll do as Master says. Dong Jianxin smiled. Have you seen Cult Leader's son? Chuli smiled. Dong Jianxin asked curiously, did Cult Leader's son really enter the great light-surpassing state? What's the situation over there? He was extremely curious. Usually when he asked Master, Master dared not violate the heavenly rules, so he was vague and vague. Because Chuli was not bound by the heavenly rules, he could speak more clearly. The Grand Masters could only close one eye. They could not send Devis to deal with him because of such a small matter. Chuli told Dong Jianxin about what he had seen and heard. Dong Jianxin was amazed. He did not expect the Grand Masters to be like this. If that's the case, the Grand Masters are not much different from here. Dong Jianxin smiled. Many Grand Masters are eager to go there. It's really not necessary. Chuli smiled. It's not much different. No matter where it is, those with low martial arts will not be able to live well. The Grand Masters is not a paradise. Sai, I still have to train hard. Dong Jianxin said. Chuli smiled and nodded. He suddenly looked up and his face darkened. What's wrong? Dong Jianxin asked. Chuli said, there are great Azuras who want to fight me again. Then don't leave Goddess Attraction Mountain. They don't dare to fight the Golden Dragon. Dong Jianxin hurriedly said. Chuli nodded. He looked up at the sky motionlessly, sensing the hostility of the great Azuras. Although they were far away, the hostility still made his heart palpitate. His hair stood on end, and his body was cold. He wanted to escape to 100,000 Hills. The great Azuras did not dare to enter 100,000 Hills. Without Sun Mingyue's scruples, he did not have to face the great Azuras head-on. He could hide in Goddess Attraction Mountain or enter 100,000 Hills. The great Azuras would not dare to come over and could only watch from afar. Chuli quickly calculated the safety of the people around him. If they really wanted to fight Shao Qi and the others or the High Duke's public house, he could only use force. After a moment, his expression changed slightly. He turned and said, Senior brother, I'll go. Where are you going if you don't stay here? Dong Jianxin hurriedly said, Don't fight with them. They won't dare to come in. Chuli shook his head. They want to fight the High Duke's public house. Damn it! Dong Jianxin's expression changed. The great Azuras were shameless and detestable. What was more detestable was that he was powerless and could not help at all. He could only watch as his junior brother dealt with the great Azuras alone. Chuli said, I have an idea. Senior brother, you don't have to worry. As he spoke, he suddenly disappeared. The next moment, he appeared in 100,000 Hills and entered the evergreen pine forest. He activated the ageless longevity technique and absorbed nearly 1,000 years of life force. At the moment of life and death, his ageless longevity technique seemed to have broken through a level and absorbed more life force. The next moment, the divine gate in his mind flashed. He appeared in front of the divine gate and pressed his palm on it. A huge force devoured his inner energy. Then, the light gate emitted a dim light and slowly opened. He stepped into the Grand Master's boundary and gave a fist salute to the two middle-aged men who were looking at him with wide eyes. He strode across the square and arrived in front of the stairway. He suddenly disappeared and appeared in the 9th heaven. He stood on top of a mountain and let out a long howl. The howl rolled like a tide, resounding through the sky and echoing in the mountains. The sky beyond heaven wanted to lure these Asuras and great Asuras into the lower realm. Then he would lure them back and see how they would deal with them. These 4 great Asuras were 4 skinny middle-aged men. Apart from their appearance, their stature and temperament were almost identical to the 4 great Asuras from before. One look, and anyone could tell that they were great Asuras. By the time the 4 of them landed, they had already surrounded Chu Li. They glared at him coldly, and then pounced on him without saying a word. Bang! The God-punishing thunder sword shot out from the depths of Chu Li's mind, and a great Asura was sent flying. The surrounding red light was faintly discernible before it disappeared. Chu Li sneered. This attack was condensed from all of his killing intents. Its power was no less than 10 times stronger than before. It directly broke the great Asura's red light shield and hit his soul. The great Asura's soul was strong, but it could not withstand this attack. This was because the God-punishing sword contained thunder and lightning, which was most capable of destroying souls. He was already at his last breath and was about to dissipate. Seeing this, the 3 great Asura's expressions changed slightly. Their palms gently struck. One of the great Asuras was severely injured. The void that was locked by the 4 of them instantly loosened. Chu Li instantly disappeared in front of them. Bang! The God-punishing thunder sword sent another person flying. Even though he had seen Sun Mingyue, the killing intent and anger that he had suppressed in his heart was still surging like a river. It was unstoppable and happened to condense into the powerful God-punishing thunder sword. Before Sun Mingyue ascended to heaven, even if he had killing intent, it was only toward the Asuras who wantonly killed ordinary people. It was anger and injustice. However, after Sun Mingyue ascended to heaven, the killing intent in his heart was completely different from before. The difference between the killing intent was like the difference between flowing water and an arrow. In addition, his God-punishing thunder sword was a level higher, and his killing intent was completely different. Hence, its power was extremely shocking and was not inferior to the sky regicide. The 2 great Asuras were severely injured. They fell to the ground and struggled with all their might. They wanted to get up and attack again. Unfortunately, their souls were injured and their inner energy could not help them. Even though they were strong and their bodies were almost immortal, their souls were not as strong. Hence, their struggles were futile. The red light shields on the other 2 great Asuras gradually brightened and became more obvious. Chu Li could see that they were ready to fight with all their might. However, he did not retreat immediately because if he retreated, they would definitely rush toward the High Duke's public house. He really could not stop them. He could only think of a way to avoid them at the last moment. Don't be presumptuous. A roar suddenly sounded. Then 24 Devis appeared in the sky and formed a formation. As soon as they appeared, the formation was immediately activated. Instantly, the void around them was locked again. The air became thick as if he was trapped in a swamp. His movements were instantly slowed down. The same movement required a few times more energy consumption. There was also an invisible force that kept pressing down on him. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on his head. Chu Li nodded. The formation set up by these 24 Devis was extraordinary and could indeed suppress the great Asuras. Just by looking at their red light shields flickering and getting brighter, he knew that the pressure was great. Namima! Suddenly, 20 red-robed old monks appeared in the sky. They sat in the void and softly chanted Buddhist mantras. Through Chu Li's omniscient mirror, He could see that these red-robed old monks were spitting out lotus flowers from their mouths. One after another, golden lotuses drifted into the formation. Some of them even landed on Chu Li's body and subdued him like he was a great Asura. Chu Li felt the power of these golden lotuses. It was pure and grand. Indeed, it was the power of the Buddhist Dharma. It did not have any effect on him because his supreme diamond indestructible body was a Buddhist power. However, it was no different from a fatal poison to the four great Asuras. When the golden lotuses landed on their bodies, their red light shields trembled violently and were weakened by a layer. It was as if snow had come into contact with boiling water. Chu Li looked at the 20 red-robed old monks in shock. These old monks' Buddhist Dharma was profound and pure. It was truly admirable. He thought that even the high monks in the Tempest Temple were far inferior to them. Looking at their red robes, they looked like monks from the Reincarnation Temple. However, when Chu Li carefully sensed them, he knew that their Dharma cultivation level was definitely not from the Reincarnation Temple. It was very likely that they were from the Titanium Temple. The two great Asuras who were struggling to get up on the ground suddenly roared. Chu Li felt that something was wrong and wanted to dodge. However, the void around him was locked, and he could not dodge. He desperately activated his light body technique to dodge backward. At the same time, he activated the black tortoise shield, supreme diamond indestructible body, and the earth matrix and reincarnation scripture. The rotary pagoda faintly appeared and enveloped him. Bang! Bang! Two dull sounds were heard. The two great Asuras exploded and disappeared. Only a blurry red mist was left. Dodge! One of the old monks shouted. Chu Li flew backward and spat out a mouthful of blood in the air. Chapter 1951. Chu Li was shocked. He did not expect the Chakra Pagoda to have such a defensive ability. Previously, he did not understand the mystery behind it. This time, he used it in a flash and realized that its defensive ability was extremely strong. It was completely different from the supreme indestructible physique and shield of the black tortoise. It converted the power of yin and yang to convert the corrosive force. Although he spat out blood, he was not seriously injured. He only used the blood to spit out the last bit of the heart of Asura's power that had invaded. In the air, he activated the god-punishing thunder sword again. A great Asura with a red glow beside him flew out again. He fell to the ground weakly and could not move anymore. Only a single great Asura was left standing. He glared at Chu Li with an extremely gloomy expression. His eyes glowed red, and the muscles on his face quickly faded away. He turned into a skeleton and slowly approached Chu Li. After Chu Li landed with a bang, he stood up and faced the great Asura, who was slowly walking over. "You must die," the great Asura said slowly. Chu Li shook his head and disappeared in a flash. In the next moment, he appeared behind the great Asura on the ground. He unsheathed the heaven-killing sword and cut off his head. The Asura's body was immortal, but he did not believe that he could survive after his head was cut off. Bang! After the great Asura's head fell to the ground, his body let out a muffled sound. Then a red fog appeared. A heart of Asura flashed and disappeared without a trace. He had already escaped. The last great Asura roared and stared at Chu Li. Then he suddenly disappeared. His cold gaze seemed to penetrate Chu Li, but he chose to leave. Chu Li frowned. This great Asura's action went against the nature of Asuras. Logically, he should not stop until he was dead, and would kill him no matter how difficult it was. Yet, he held back at the last moment. This kind of great Asura was especially scary. He needed to be careful. If not for the heavenly star insight skill, he would really be uneasy and must be careful day and night. With the heavenly star insight skill, he was not afraid as long as he dared to come. He had already realized that he was no longer the same as before. Although it had only been a few days, his cultivation had improved greatly, and his god-slaying thunder sword had improved greatly. He was no longer afraid of the great Azura. At this moment, the 20 red-robed old monks' gazes fell upon Chu Li. 10 out of the 24 celestial beings had fallen to the ground and were motionless. They had already breathed their last. The power of a great Azura's self-destruction was earth-shattering. The fact that only 10 of them had died was already due to the tyrannical strength of their formation. Chu Li secretly shook his head. These 20 heaven men were all first rank and could be said to be top-notch strength. However, they had fallen like this. It must be very regretful. However, he did not feel the slightest bit of regret, only a vague sense of joy. These Azuras should have been dealt with by them, but they just had to bring the trouble to the lower realm, causing chaos in the world he was in, and countless innocent people had died. Amitabha! The old monks in red chanted the name of Buddha and floated to the side of the 10 celestial beings and began to chant sutras. The remaining 14 celestial beings had already surrounded Chu Li. Chu Li stood there without moving. He watched as the 20 old monks floated away after sending the 10 celestials off. The red monk floated away and disappeared into the void in the blink of an eye. He turned his gaze to the 14 celestial beings. A green-robed elder stared at Chu Li with a dark expression and slowly asked, "Who are you?" Chu Li calmly replied, "I'm Chu Li. Chu Li?" The green-robed elder frowned and thought for a while. "Chu Li of the Ji dynasty?" Chu Li slowly nodded. "That's me. Why are you here?" The green-robed elder asked in a low voice, "Why did you lure the great Azuras here?" Great Azuras were not Azuras. They would not usually move. They would only act to assassinate important figures or during critical moments of war. It was indeed unusual for 4 great Azuras to appear in the 9 heavens. No matter how unscrupulous the great Azuras were, they should have known how powerful the 9 heavens was. They would not come here to die, but they had come here. They must have been driven by anger and murderous intent, which was why they did such an unwise thing. The great Azura's martial arts were powerful, and they were usually very rational. However, they also had a weakness, which was that they had a strong, murderous intent. Once they encountered someone they wanted to kill, they would disregard everything and kill no matter how dangerous it was. When he heard Chu Li's name, he knew that Chu Li had deliberately lured the great Azuras here. No one else had the ability to lure the great Azuras here. Previously, the 4 great Azuras had died because of Chu Li and Sun Mingyue. This matter could not be hidden from the rank 1 celestials, and they had discussed it quite a bit. They thought highly of Sun Mingyue and were even more afraid of Chu Li. They did not expect Chu Li to be so ruthless. He actually lured the great Azuras to the outland, causing the deaths of their companions. Chu Li gave a fist salute and said, "I didn't expect the great Azuras to surround and kill me here. Fortunately, seniors came to help me. I'm very grateful." As he spoke, he even showed a grateful expression. "Grateful? Heh!" The green-robed elder sneered. "You're originally from the lower realm. Why are you here?" He secretly cursed him for being cunning and wanted nothing more than to kill Chu Li with one palm. However, he knew that he did not have the ability to do so. Above the first grade was the transcendental grade, and above the transcendental grade was the great enlightened realm. Only when one reached the great enlightened realm would he be considered a true enlightened realm god. He would be able to break free from the shackles of the Grandmaster's boundary and reach the higher Grandmaster's boundary. Only a true, great, heavenly god could compare to a supreme spirit beast. Chu Li realized that Asuras, celestial beings, and spirit beasts had completely different classifications for supreme grade. Great Asuras were equivalent to supreme grade celestial beings, while great divine gods were equivalent to supreme grade spirit beasts. He didn't know how many supreme grade celestial beings there were in the Outland, but there probably weren't many. Otherwise, they wouldn't have sent rank 1 celestial beings, but supreme grade celestial beings. There definitely weren't as many supreme grade celestial beings as there were great Asuras. A group of 14 or 15 people, and 10 corpses naturally attracted the attention of the people around them. Soon, someone reported. As soon as they arrived at the basilica, a handsome young man in a green robe quickly descended the 66 black stone steps. He approached them and said in a low voice, "You're from the Taiwei Hall, right?" "Yes." Chen Haoming Fist saluted and said, "I'm here to see Elder Meng." "Follow me." The young man in green nodded and turned to go up the steps. He suddenly stopped. "Senior Chen should come first." "All right." Chen Haoming nodded. His gaze fell on Chu Li, and he gave the others a look, signaling them to keep an eye on Chu Li and not let him run away. Chu Li shook his head. This Chen Haoming was purposely trying to provoke him. Chen Haoming quickly followed the young man into the basilica. Chu Li turned to look at the 13 elders around him and shook his head with a sigh. One of the elders said calmly, "Chu Li, you shouldn't have come here. This is the Outland." Chu Li replied, "I was desperate. I just wanted to escape with my life." Sigh. The elder shook his head. The loss this time was too heavy. Too many people died. Even if you're not guilty, it won't end well for you. Chu Li showed a helpless expression. A moment later, the young man walked down the steps and said in a low voice, "Which one of you is Chu Li? Please follow me." Chu Li Fist saluted and followed the young man up the 66 wide black stone steps. They arrived at the basilica and turned east. They passed through a courtyard and arrived at the main hall of the courtyard. An elder with white eyebrows and beard sat on the main seat in the main hall. He looked kind and amiable. He stroked his beard and looked at Chu Li. When he saw him enter, he smiled. "You're Chu Li from the Ji dynasty?" Chu Li Fist saluted. "Greetings, Elder Meng." "Good, good." Elder Meng waved his hand and laughed. "You're a hero. I like young heroes the most. Once he's established a firm foundation in the future, it'll be difficult. Do you think the great Asura doesn't know what's going on?" Meng Jifan said snappily, "They can't wait for you to make a move. Then you can take the opportunity to rescue him and do him a favor." "Elder, are we really going to recruit him into Taiwei Hall?" Chen Haoming sighed, helplessly. He knew that what he said was reasonable. He said hatefully, "He killed so many of our people. We don't like him. If he comes, I'll welcome him with open arms." Meng Jifan said, "You should know how important it is to have a strong companion. In the future, when we fight against the Asura, having him or not will make a huge difference." "All right." Chen Haoming saw that he was so eager and knew that it was useless to say more. He took a deep breath and said, "I don't think Chu Li will come to our Taiwei Hall." "That's not necessarily true." Meng Jifan laughed and said, "I'll think of a way. Don't make trouble, or don't blame me for being ruthless." Although he said it with a smile, Chen Haoming shuddered. His heart trembled, and he said in a low voice, "Since Elder has decided, I won't make trouble. I won't say anything." "Very good." Meng Jifan smiled and said, I like your cleverness. Go and comfort the families of the fallen. Sai, no matter how long you live, this is the end. When he thought about the fall of a rank 1 celestial, Meng Jifan felt sorry for him. A rank 1 celestial was already the top existence in the Outland. Apart from those supreme ranks, rank 1 celestial was supposed to be free and unfettered and would not die in an accident. Unfortunately, there were always unexpected things in the world. No matter how powerful one was, they could not be more powerful than fate. In the face of fate, an individual's power was insignificant. The older one was, the more one was afraid of death. Unfortunately, death could not be avoided. The battle between the Outland and the Azura would definitely become more intense. He was already a supreme celestial and could not become a great enlightened master. Therefore, the most important thing was to have stronger subordinates. If he could recruit Chu Li, his position in the Elder Society would rise suddenly. When he thought about this, he became more eager. Chu Li appeared on a mountain opposite the great light surpassing realm. He sat down cross-legged and bathed in the moonlight as he prepared to cultivate in isolation. Now that he had killed 3 great Azuras, even with the help of others, he should be able to obtain a lot of power. He might even be able to condense the chakra pagoda and complete the 9th level. His calm heart rippled. If he could really condense the chakra pagoda, he would be able to reverse yin and yang, reincarnate and control life and death. When he thought about this, he was no longer afraid of the people around him dying. Chapter 1954. Chu Li did not say anything. Sun Mingyue said, "There are 9 divisions above the 9 heavens: wind, thunder, lightning, sun, moon, star, and Tai Hao. Each of the 9 divisions has 3 elders in charge. If you want to become an elder and enter the Elders Guild, the shortcut is to go to the 9 divisions. The Taiyu Temple that you mentioned is not a big force at all. It does not belong to the 9 divisions and is not on the list." Who is in charge of the Elders Guild? Chu Li asked. He already understood that the Elders Guild was in charge of the Outland, but the Elders Guild was quite mysterious. He had not been able to find out. Although Sun Mingyue had just come to the Outland, it was easy for her to find out as a disciple of the Great Light Surpassing State. The composition of the Elders Guild is quite complicated. Sun Mingyue said, "There are 9 palace leaders and 2 deputy palace leaders, sect leaders of the 9 heavens sects, and some other sect leaders or elders. Some say there are more than 300 people. Some say there are more than 1,000 people. No one knows exactly how many people there are." "Why so mysterious?" Chu Li frowned. "Isn't it troublesome to discuss things with so many people? It is said that there is a meeting hall that is an artifact. It is the most mysterious. Once something big happens, all the elders can be summoned to discuss it. The elders can vote by raising their hands and quickly make a decision. As for the small matters, it is decided by each hall. If there is any disagreement, it can be submitted to the meeting hall." Sun Mingyue shook her head. "Not many people know how it works. It is considered confidential." Chu Li raised his eyebrows. He felt that the Elders Guild of the Outland was quite interesting. It is said that the sects below the 9th heaven also have elders, but there are few of them. It is difficult for them to influence the overall situation. Sun Mingyue said, "Goddess Attraction Mountain had a spot for an elder. Unfortunately, it was destroyed by Qixing Palace, so this spot belongs to Qixing Palace." Chu Li frowned. Sun Mingyue said, "Qixing Palace dared to be so presumptuous and grasped the perfect timing. It is said that there are important people involved. It is not that simple. I will slowly investigate and see if I can find out the truth." Chu Li said, "There is no need." Sun Mingyue was stunned. Chu Li chuckled. There's no need to rush Qixing Palace. Let them be smug for a while. Okay. Sun Mingyue nodded lightly and didn't ask any more questions. Deep down, she had decided to investigate this matter thoroughly. She wanted to find out who had secretly caused the destruction of Goddess Attraction Mountain and seek revenge by finding the real culprit. Although Chu Li's martial arts were strong, he was alone in the Grandmaster's boundary. Now that Goddess Attraction Mountain was gone, it was difficult for him to go anywhere, so he could only do it on his own. Chu Li said, "The most important thing for you now is still your martial arts and potential cultivation. Don't worry about other things. Sooner or later, the truth about Goddess Attraction Mountain will be revealed, so there's no hurry." All right. Sun Mingyue felt that Chu Li's words were reasonable. However, since she was focused on her cultivation, she could ask her senior sisters to help her investigate. The atmosphere in Great Light Surpassing State was much better than that of the Holy Church of Light. There were not as many schemes and plots. Instead, they were united against outsiders. Chu Li said, "It would be great if I could get my hands on a few star stones." He and Sun Mingyue weren't strangers. If he needed star stones, he wouldn't regard her as an outsider. He directly asked her to help him look for it. If Sun Mingyue needed it, he would also think of a way. "I will think of a way." Sun Mingyue nodded. Chu Li looked into the distance and smiled. "You should go back." He had already seen Liang Yueying fluttering over. "It's senior sister Liang," Sun Mingyue said. "If it's inconvenient for me in the future, I'll ask senior sister Liang to send me letters." Chu Li nodded. Sun Mingyue looked at him deeply. She fluttered and met up with Liang Yueying. The two of them fluttered away. Chu Li and Liang Yueying looked at each other. Liang Yueying nodded slightly. Her attitude was different from before. Chu Li could not help but laugh. It seemed like Great Light Surpassing State had to accept his identity. This time, he had used Great Azura to establish his power in the Outland. It had saved him a lot of trouble. He originally planned to channel, but after some thought, he changed his mind and disappeared. A bright moon hung in the sky. The imperial garden of the imperial house in Fairy's capital was brightly lit as if it was daytime. The night wind blew, and the imperial garden was extremely quiet. Only the voices of Xiao Qi, Xiao Shi, and Lu Yurong, as well as the low chirping of the insects, formed a harmonious picture that intoxicated Chu Li. The three women were having a discussion in the imperial garden. The imperial garden had almost become a place for them to discuss matters. There was no one else around except Hui Qing. Hui Qing closed her eyes slightly as if she did not care about what they were talking about. The force on her body was faintly discernible, as if it had merged with the void. Her body was constantly swallowing and releasing invisible energy. She suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Chu Li with a sharp gaze. Chu Li appeared from the void and gave a fist salute to Hui Qing. Hui Qing returned a fist salute. The three women stopped talking and looked at Chu Li. Xiao Shi scoffed. "You still know to come back. Did you think you forgot about us?" Lu Yurong pursed her lips and smiled. Xiao Qi looked at Chu Li with concern. She felt that Chu Li's force was different, as if he was a different person. Chu Li smiled. "I went to the Outland." Hui Qing looked at him in surprise. Lu Yurong and the other two women looked at him in shock. Chu Li told them everything that happened. He did not hide the fact that he teamed up with Sun Mingyue to deal with the Great Azuras, Sun Mingyue's ascension, and the fact that he went to the Outland to meet Sun Mingyue. He only used the spring and autumnal style to briefly describe the events. He emphasized the Great Azuras and emphasized how powerful they were. If they saw them, they should not fight them head-on and should just ascend to heaven. Did great Asuras really appear? Hui Qing asked. Chu Li said, I just fought with the second group of great Asuras and lured them to the Outland. The Supreme Mountain Palace of the Outland mobilized and lost 10 rank 1 Celestials to eliminate them. Taiwet Palace. Hui Qing frowned and said, Taiwet Palace only has about 31st level Celestials. 10 of them have died, and their strength has been greatly damaged. However, Taiwet Palace has overestimated themselves. How dare they deal with great Ashura? Chu Li said, they didn't expect there to be 4 great Asuras, right? Which sect was the monk who teamed up with Supreme Mountain Palace? It should be the Tempest Temple, Hui Qing said. Don't the Tempest Temple wear gray monk robes? Chu Li asked. Hui Qing scoffed. The monk robes of the Tempest Temple are divided into different colors. Gray is the lowest, the highest is the purple gold Kasaya, and red is already the highest level. The next level is the purple gold Kasaya. I see. Chu Li came to a realization. Hui Qing said, the great Asuras dared to enter the 9 heavens. They were courting death. It seems like they hate you to the core. Chu Li smiled and nodded. Senior, do you know the situation of the sects in the 9 heavens? If I use the Outland to do things, which sect should I join? You can kill great Asuras. There will definitely be people who will want to recruit you. With your current cultivation level, it won't be a problem for you to join any sect. You can do whatever you want. Few people will provoke you as long as you don't provoke the people from the 9 divisions. Hui Qing said, what if I join the 9 divisions? Then go to the Rain Master Hall. One of the 9 divisions isn't that powerful. They need you. It's better to provide timely help than icing on the cake. Hui Qing said. Chu Li nodded slowly. Chapter 1955. Originally, he wanted to stay in the lower realm and did not want to come to the Outland. He would occasionally visit Sun Mingyue or get some treasures back, but the Starstones disrupted his original plan. He urgently needed the Starstones to upgrade the Star Insight so that he could break the heart of Azura. The Starstones were not as easy to obtain as Sun Mingyue said. He needed enough power and contribution. The big sects had a unique advantage in this aspect. Otherwise, he would not be able to obtain much by himself. It seemed that joining the Hall of Rain Masters was a shortcut to obtain the Star Stones. It would definitely be faster to collect the Star Stones with the strength of one faction. However, this was not something he could join just because he wanted to. He still needed a certain method to make the Hall of Rain Masters actively recruit him and give them a glimmer of hope so that he could enter. But don't think that the Hall of Rain Masters will invite you just because you are an enlightened master. It is not that easy to enter the 9 factions. The threshold is extremely high, and they think highly of themselves. They almost never accept outsiders. Hui Qing said. Chu Li raised his eyebrows. So I have no chance to enter? If you enter like this, there is no chance. Hui Qing said. No matter how weak the Hall of Rain Masters is, it's not a place that anyone can enter. It also has its rules. It requires the joint recommendation of the disciples in the Hall of Rain Masters. Otherwise, no matter how strong you are, you won't be able to enter the Hall of Rain Masters. Then how can I enter? Chu Li asked. By chance. Hui Qing shook her head. Other than chance, there is no other way. Small factions like the Hall of Taiyu will recruit you without hesitation. They are impatient and do not care about their reputation. However, it is almost impossible for the 9 factions to do so. Their arrogance is ingrained in their bones. They will only beg for help, so you can only rely on chance. Chu Li frowned. Chance. Yes, only chance, Hui Qing said. You must not go to the Hall of Rain Masters alone. If you want to join, they will feel that you have ulterior motives and will reject you. It will be useless no matter how strong your martial arts are. Chu Li said, that is how they do things. That is how the Hall of Rain Masters does things. They are very willful. Hui Qing said, who asked them to be one of the 9 divisions. They are so arrogant and overbearing. No one can doubt them, and even if they doubt them, they can only keep it to themselves. No matter how weak the Hall of Rain Masters is, it is still one of the 9 divisions. It is not up to others to criticize them. All right, then, we'll just have to depend on our luck. Chu Li nodded slowly. Hui Qing said, you want to stay in the sky beyond heaven and not come back? Chu Li shook his head. Although the Outland is good, it's not my home. There are many geniuses in the Outland. Hui Qing nodded. Moreover, the spiritual energy in the Outland is better than here. Their heart technique is also better than this world, so their cultivation progress will be faster. I can foresee that their achievements will be better than Chu Li. They just need time. Are there many masters in the Outland who are better than Chu Li? Xiaoshi was unconvinced. She felt that Chu Li was already the top master, since he could kill Grand Azura. He could even do whatever he wanted in the Outland. Hui Qing nodded. There are many. The Grandmasters are so strong. How could they be defeated by an Azura state cultivator? Xiaoshi scoffed, unconvinced. Those top masters are all high and mighty. They value their lives very much, so they haven't made a move yet. Once they make a move, it will be a matter of life and death. Victory or defeat will only be decided in one battle. Now is not the time, Hui Qing said. How about entering the Taiwei Hall? Xiaoshi asked. Hui Qing shook her head. The Taiwei Hall is too weak. It can only be a pawn. It's better not to enter. Chu Li waved his hand and smiled. There's no rush. Take your time. I'll stay down there most of the time. I'll just go there occasionally. He understood that entering the Rain Master's Hall was the only way. There was no future in other sections. No matter how strong his martial arts was, people only cared about his future. They felt that his potential had been exhausted, so they would not value him. Go see Leader Sun. Xiaoshi scoffed. You're really loyal. Chu Li looked at Xiao Qi embarrassedly. Xiao Qi turned her gaze away from him. Lu Yurong sighed. This Leader Sun is really... Sun Mingwe had such a status and beauty, yet she sacrificed herself to save Chu Li. She abandoned the Holy Church of Light. She was not a qualified leader, nor was she a good master. Love was too harmful. It made Sun Mingwe, who was known for being calm and wise, do such a thing. How is Sun Mingwe doing up there? Xiaoshi asked. Chu Li nodded. Master and Grandmaster are up there. She's doing well. She's doing well up there. Without her, the Holy Church of Light will be unstable. Lu Yurong said. Chu Li looked at her. Xiaoqi said calmly, let's go and see. Chapter 1956. Bang! A loud noise was heard in the Divine Light Basilica. Duing stood outside the basilica and shrunk her neck, sighing helplessly. The bishop was angry again, so she could not help but pity Li Meng. Li Meng did not become a saint. She only became the bishop's disciple for a short period of time before she surpassed the saint and became the bishop's leader. Her foundation was shallow. So even though she was now an enlightened master, the disciples of the Holy Church of Light were not convinced. Sun Mingwe became a saint at a young age and monopolized the power of the church, suppressing many of the elders in the church. Whether it was her martial arts or wisdom, the disciples were convinced and obedient. However, this new bishop had only been in office for a short time, so no one could tell what she was capable of. If she suddenly became the bishop, how could the disciples be convinced? Even though she was an enlightened master, it was inevitable that she would do some things. This was purely a subconscious move. She did not really want to overthrow the bishop. She just wanted the bishop to rule and delegate more power so that everyone could have a taste of power. It was human nature to fight for power, especially when one was skilled in martial arts and had a respected position. It was impossible to give up power. They knew the danger. If they accidentally angered the bishop, they would be in big trouble. Therefore, they were very careful so that no one could find an excuse to attack or punish them. They were all old people, so it was easy for them to do such things. They could not find any evidence against them, which made Li Meng even angrier. Li Meng was dressed in white, and her face was covered with a white veil. She looked like the reincarnation of Sun Mingyue. She held onto the table and did not move. The atmosphere in the divine light basilica seemed to have frozen. She stared fixedly at a file on the table, and her bright eyes burned like raging flames. She wished for nothing more than to tear this file into pieces, but she forcefully suppressed this impulse and could only forcefully endure it. She had a belly full of rage that had nowhere to vent. The more she could not find any evidence against them, the more depressed she felt. If her master was here, they would not have dared to fool around like this. She did not have her master's wisdom. When faced with such a situation, she could not do anything but let them lead her by the nose. She gritted her teeth, but there was nothing she could do. She was an enlightened master, but an enlightened master could not simply attack a grandmaster or an innate master. To deal with these subordinates, she could only use her power and influence, not her martial arts. Moreover, power and influence required a justifiable reason, and yet there was no reason to punish them. Cough. Suddenly, a clear cough interrupted her anger. She turned around and saw Chu Li. She suppressed her anger, but still felt a little indignant. She gave a fist salute and said, "Masters Junior." Chu Li smiled. "Why are you throwing a tantrum?" Li Meng took off her white veil, revealing a taut and delicate face. Her anger was still there. "These guys are too infuriating. I want to slap them to death." Chu Li said, "You're taking advantage of your seniority just because you're still young?" "Yes." Li Meng nodded forcefully and said, "There are also some who are loyal to my master and me, but most of them are just guys who see the wind and set the helm. When they see that I'm easy to bully, they all come up to me. They want me, the cult master, to be just a decoration. They can decide everything. Am I the cult master, or are they the cult master?" She let out all her resentment in one breath, and her heart instantly felt much better. She was all alone here, without a friend she could confide in. It was really depressing. Chu Li asked, "What do you plan to do?" "I really have no choice." Li Meng shook her head. "These guys are all sly and cunning. I can't do anything, and I can't find any evidence to use against them even if I scold them. This is really infuriating." Chu Li pondered and said, "Do you need my help?" If Li Meng encountered such a situation, of course, he could turn a blind eye and let Li Meng suffer on her own. Through the torture, her talent would improve, and her temperament would be greatly beneficial to her growth. If Pang Shiji encountered such a situation, he would not intervene. However, Li Meng was different. She was Sun Mingyue's disciple, and she was also a woman. She should not be tortured like this, and it was better for her to be a little more obedient. Chu Li could not help but want to help her and free her from this predicament. Li Meng shook her head. "Masters Junior, you won't be able to help much. No matter how strong your martial arts is or how high your reputation is, if you interfere with the internal affairs of the church, the people will still be unhappy. It's fine if you're here, but once you leave, they'll make a bigger fuss, and they'll even look down on me as the bishop. The internal affairs of the church are the internal affairs of the church, and we can't let outsiders help us. This goes against the bottom line. Chu Li looked at her in surprise. Li Meng's tense face broke into a smile. Masters Jr., I understand this. Chu Li sighed. You've really improved a lot, Li Meng said, but I still have to thank you, Masters Jr. With you around, I'm full of confidence, and I'm not afraid of anything. Chu Li smiled and shook his head. Do you think I'll use this identity to help you? Zhao De. Li Meng's eyes lit up, and she asked in surprise, Masters Jr., you're going to transform into Zhao De? Chu Li nodded. It's time for Priest Zhao to come to the rescue. Li Meng immediately became excited. Masters Jr., do you really want to do this? I'll teach these people a lesson first, Chu Li said with a smile. It won't take much effort. Thank you, Masters Jr. Li Meng said happily. Once Chu Li transformed into Zhao De, he would no longer have to worry about anything. As a guardian of the church, it was natural for her to be loyal to the bishop. Moreover, it was perfectly justifiable for her to act as the bishop's lackey, and no one could say anything about it. Furthermore, it was also because of her brilliant methods that she was able to subdue Zhao De. The church's followers would only admire her, and they would not have any rebellious thoughts like Chu Li did when he interfered. Chu Li smiled. Then from tomorrow onwards, I'll transform into Zhao De and return to the Great Light Peak. Then I'll teach those people a lesson on your behalf, so they'll know what it means to be a part of. All right, Li Meng said with a smile. The next morning, Chu Li transformed into Zhao De and appeared at the bottom of the Great Light Peak. Following his return, the atmosphere in the Holy Church of Light immediately changed, and the people stopped being sloppy. Zhao De's name was known throughout the world, especially to the disciples of the Holy Church of Light. Not only was he famous, but his status was also respected. On the second evening after Zhao De returned to the Great Light Peak, he severely injured 2 altar leaders in the Holy Church of Light and killed several branch leaders. The atmosphere in the Holy Church of Light instantly changed, and everyone became well-behaved. They dared to bully the bishop because he was young and soft-hearted, so they would not act recklessly even if they were enlightened masters. However, Zhao De was different. He was cruel and merciless, and it would not end well for them to fall into his hands. A bright moon hung in the sky, and the Divine Light Basilica was brightly lit. Chu Li and Li Meng sat in the basilica and chatted. Masters Jr., you're really useful. Li Meng smiled like a flower. Ever since Chu Li came, she felt relaxed and no longer felt any pressure. Now that she had someone to rely on, and her subordinates had become well-behaved, everything was going smoothly, and it was wonderful. She could not wait for Chu Li to stay here. Chu Li shook his head and smiled. Did you notice the shadows of the other 3 sects? Li Meng frowned and asked, Masters Jr., are you saying that the other 3 sects are behind this? Chu Li said, there are traces of them. Suddenly, she looked up at the sky. Dark clouds quickly gathered from all directions and condensed into a black umbrella in the blink of an eye, enveloping the courtyard where Chu Li was. Xue Ling felt her heart palpitate, and the hairs on her body stood up. She instinctively wanted to escape. She glided into Chu Li's courtyard, wanting to wake him up and leave as soon as possible. Chu Li was already standing in the middle of the courtyard. When he saw her coming over, he waved his hand and suddenly disappeared. He had already appeared at the peak of a mountain and was sitting cross-legged on a rock. This place seemed to be closer to the sky. The dark clouds condensed again, and in the blink of an eye, they were already above his head. At the same time, there was a faint sound of thunder coming from the sky. Chu Li ignored it and reflected on himself looking at the chakram pagoda that had already condensed into one. The 9 levels of the chakram pagoda had already condensed into one. It was as if it was real, but it was condensed through observation. The chakram pagoda's soul was the seed, and the earth matrix and reincarnation scriptures, inner energy and soul energy, were the soil, finally forming this chakram pagoda that was both real and fake. Chu Li sensed the chakram pagoda and had a strange feeling. It was as if it was a part of him, and he did not need to deliberately explore its use. With a single thought, he could turn it into a fake and turn it into a real one. There was a strange power inside the chakram pagoda. He had comprehended the life and death scripture, so he could feel that this power could reverse life and death. It was like the power of time, and also the power of life and death. Crack! The dark clouds that were only the size of a room suddenly split open into a zig-shaped gap. Silver light leaked out and formed into a silver chain. This silver chain went straight for Chu Li. Boom! Accompanied by the sound of thunder, the silver chain hit the top of Chu Li's head. Chu Li's hair stood up, and his body flashed with silver light. Crack! Boom! Bolts of lightning and thunder struck Chu Li's body, and his body flashed with silver light. A towering tower gradually appeared around his body. It was about 30 floors tall and more than 200 square meters. Chu Li could no longer be seen in the silver light. Only the tower stood tall, welcoming the baptism of thunder and lightning. As the thunder and lightning struck, the black tower became more solid and powerful. Gradually, it began to shrink by half. It was only 15 floors tall and more than 100 square meters. The body of the tower faintly flashed with a dark luster. It was heavy and simple, and it was worthy of respect. The thunder and lightning became more violent, and there was only a silver light between heaven and earth. It was as if a pool of thunder had descended and completely submerged the tower. The tower began to flash with a dark luster. Chapter 1958. This stone tower was personally built by Chu Li and Xue Ling. Even the stone materials were transported by Xue Ling herself without alerting anyone. There were only the 2 of them on the island in the middle of the lake. The scribes were not allowed to get close to the island, and they could not even get close to it. Under the effect of the formation, no one could get close to the island other than Chu Li and Xiao Taiying. Xue Ling looked at the stone tower and asked curiously, "Master, what is this stone tower used for?" "To transcend life and death." Chu Li said, "Under the protection of this tower, the life and death of everyone in the High Duke's public house will no longer be controlled by reincarnation." Xue Ling was shocked. "Transcend life and death?" Chu Li said, "You will know in the future." As he spoke, his finger gently moved on the stone. Wherever his finger passed, strange patterns and strange words were left on the stone. It was so mysterious that Xue Ling could not understand it. She opened her mouth and asked what it was. "You can say it's a formation." Chu Li shook his head. "I'm still studying its use." Although he had drawn all these, he did not understand these patterns and words. These had suddenly appeared on the body of the revolving wheel pagoda after it was condensed. He was just drawing according to the pattern and could not make any mistakes in every stroke. His clairvoyance was clear and accurate, but it was also very taxing on his mind. Xue Ling saw that he was focused on drawing and did not distract him. She quietly watched and wanted to understand the mystery. Chu Li drew for 4 hours in one go and covered the entire stone tower. When his right index finger left the stone tower, a strange feeling came from the tower. He suddenly formed a strange connection with the tower. It was as if the tower was him. Through the tower, he could sense everything within 100 miles. It was as if the tower was a part of him. This strange feeling fascinated him. If he built towers everywhere in the world, would he be able to control the whole world? Then he shook his head and laughed. Even if he had the ability, he did not have the brain power. How much energy would it take to sense so many towers? Moreover, how much time would it take to sense each tower? He could only build a rotary tower at a key place to protect the surroundings. He carefully sensed that the stone tower began to condense a bit of energy. This strand of power seemed to be extracted from the earth as well as from the void. Strand by strand, it condensed and filled the entire tower. Through the stone tower, he sensed that in a forest 10 miles away from Chongming town, a grasshopper was eaten by a bird and died. After the grasshopper died, its soul floated up. It was originally floating towards the sky, but it suddenly made a turn and floated towards the stone pagoda. It slowly entered the stone pagoda and combined with the original power in the pagoda. Immediately, it condensed into a grasshopper. It looked exactly the same as the original, but it was a spiritual body and not a physical body. Chuli shook his head. This grasshopper's body had already fallen into the bird's stomach and could not be revived. Otherwise, this grasshopper's soul could float back to the bird and be resurrected. The most mysterious thing was the power condensed by the stone pagoda. It was different from the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, and also different from the power of souls. It was very strange, and no one could see how it was condensed. It could only be said that the mysteries of the world were unfathomable, and not something that could be seen through by humans. After that, he returned to Fairy's capital and brought Xiao Qi and the other 2 ladies over without alerting Hui Qing. The 3 ladies came to the front of the stone pagoda and looked at it in surprise. They had sharp senses and could feel that this stone pagoda was strange and extraordinary. Although they did not know what it was used for, they knew that it was not an ordinary item. Moreover, it was built on the island in the middle of the lake, which was the core of the formation. "All of you drip a drop of blood from your heart on it," Chuli said. He even pointed at Xueling. Xueling smiled and bit her index finger to drip a drop of blood on the stone pagoda. The blood instantly disappeared. Xiao Qi also bit her slender finger and squeezed a drop of blood onto the stone pagoda. Xiao Shi and Lu Yurong also did as they were told. Seeing that the blood was quickly absorbed into the stone, Xiao Shi asked, "What is this used for?" "To save our lives," Chuli let out a sigh of relief. Xiao Shi curiously patted the stone pagoda. She felt a strange rebounding force, and her palm went numb. "How?" Li shook his head and suddenly hit the stone pagoda with his palm. Hum! It sounded like a bronze bell, and the stone pagoda seemed to tremble. The 4 ladies were instantly energized. They felt a force entering their minds, and their minds became clear. Their energy seemed to be especially abundant, as if they just had a good sleep. They felt refreshed, and their condition was better than before. Chuli said, "This energy will protect all of you so that your souls won't be destroyed." The force produced by the pagoda could protect their minds and spirits. This force was connected to him. Once it sensed that their souls were under attack, he would immediately appear. Moreover, he could use the rotary pagoda to strengthen their soul energy and defend against the attack. With that, he was completely relieved. Even if Azura came to attack them, they would not be afraid. Moreover, once the 4 of them died, their souls would not ascend to heaven, but would fall into the rotary pagoda. They could be resurrected using the rotary pagoda. Chapter 1959. Chuli decided to go to the Outland to see if there was any news about Sun Minghua. News that was top secret to this realm might have spread to all levels of the heavens beyond the heavens, so Sun Minghua might know about it. Early in the morning, he appeared at the peak of the mountain opposite the Great Light Domain. The Supreme Vajra, in his mind, moved slightly, trying to see if he could contact Sun Mingyue. Unfortunately, he was still cut off. He did not make a sound and only activated the Supreme Vajra Sutra. Through this, Sun Mingyue could sense it. He was sitting cross-legged on a boulder at the peak of the mountain when he suddenly sensed someone approaching. In the distance, a handsome young man in snow-white clothes floated over. Beside him was a skinny old man. They floated as if they were weightless, like the shadow of the white-clothed man. When they floated, there was no sound of wind. Chu Li looked at the man. He was as handsome as a woman and had a gentle temperament. If he were to change into women's clothes, he would really be an outstanding beauty. He activated the omniscient mirror and realized that Sun Mingyue's name flashed through the man's mind. He wanted to see if Sun Mingyue's beauty was as good as the rumors said. If so, he must marry her. As for Nangong He, whom he had met on the way, he secretly sneered. A defeated opponent was not worth mentioning at all, and was not worth mentioning. As for Chu Li, who Nangong He had mentioned, he did not take him seriously. No matter how powerful Chu Li was, he was just an enlightened master from the lower realm. When enlightened masters from the lower realm came to the Outland, they were only around rank 3 celestial beings. Chu Li was even stronger. He was a rank 2 celestial being, but he was not considered a top-notch master. Chu Li raised his eyebrows and vaguely guessed the identity of this person. It should be Deng Lu, who Nangong He wanted to deal with. He did not intend to make a knife for Nangong He, but he had a plan to teach Deng Lu a lesson. Deng Lu's aptitude was also top-notch. In the eyes of those sects, Deng Lu was probably more important than him. He was also highly valued by those sections. However, since he had come to provoke Sun Mingyue, that meant that he was looking for trouble. There was no need for him to be polite. After teaching him a lesson, everyone would know that Sun Mingyue was already taken. Those who wanted to come over would have to weigh their own abilities. Right at that moment, Sun Mingyue sensed Chu Li's presence. His white robe fluttered in the wind, and a delicate fragrance wafted towards him. Sun Mingyue purposely did not hide her presence and walked in front of Chu Li openly. There must be a lot of people watching from the shadows in the radiant victory realm. She approached Chu Li and held his large hand with her jade-like hand. She removed her white veil to reveal her beautiful face and chuckled. "You're back so soon. Is something the matter?" Chu Li inhaled the delicate fragrance emanating from her body and held her cool and soft hands in his. He nodded gently. "Too many celestial beings have descended recently. It seems like there's going to be a great battle. Is it the Asuras who are going to descend?" Sun Mingyue held his hand as they sat side by side on the giant rock. She said softly, "I heard that the Asura realm has already issued the Asura order to invade our realm." Chu Li asked, "What about the Outland?" "Celestial beings have already descended to deal with it." Sun Mingyue frowned and said, "But the price of sending down celestial beings is quite high, and after the celestial beings descend, their strength will be affected, so we still have to rely on ourselves." "How many Asuras will descend?" "It's hard to say. I'm afraid more than half of the Asuras will run over." Chu Li nodded slowly, his expression solemn. Sun Mingyue said, "The Outland won't allow the Asuras to occupy our world, but it's hard to say when they'll actually make a move." She was proficient in politics, so she naturally understood that the Outland was using the power of their own world to weaken the Asuras. Once the Asuras lost their edge, the Outland would then strike and severely injure them. Chu Li chuckled. "The Outland has a good plan, but this is how the world is. The weak are prey to the strong." Sun Mingyue looked at him calmly. but her eyes were flickering. It was obvious that she was upset and angry. She said softly, "Don't think about taking revenge on the Outland. They're too powerful." Chuli nodded slowly, but his desire for revenge grew stronger. So what if the Outland was powerful? They had placed their own world in such a dangerous situation, causing countless innocent people to die. He had to take revenge. He wanted to kill everyone in the Elder Society. Sun Mingyue sighed and said, "This wasn't a decision made by just one or two people. It was a decision made by many elders. Did the Holy Church of Light do anything?" Chuli smiled. "Li Meng is very capable, beyond imagination. Don't worry, things have stabilized now. She's preparing to invite the other 3 sects to the Great Light Peak as guests. It's rare that you know how to threaten and bribe." Sun Mingyue pursed her lips and smiled. As they spoke, their hands were held together. Deng Lu, who had rushed over, saw them. Deng Lu only saw a graceful shadow floating in the air. He could not help but be curious and wanted to see Sun Mingyue's appearance. He did not think much of it when he saw her holding hands with Chuli. He only felt that it was a pity that such a beautiful woman was already taken. "Young lady, are you a disciple of the Great Light Surpassing State?" Deng Lu came to the front of the boulder and stopped about 10 meters away. He gave a fist salute and asked politely. He had a gentle temperament, a handsome face, and an elegant and calm demeanor. It was easy for him to leave a good impression on others. Sun Mingyue nodded. "Yes." As she spoke, she hung up the white veil again to cover her face. "Young lady, do you know Sun Mingyue?" Deng Lu asked. Sun Mingyue answered, "I'm Sun Mingyue." Deng Lu was stunned and looked at Chu Li in surprise. Chu Li calmly said, "I'm Chu Li. Are you Chu Li from the Ji dynasty?" Deng Lu asked. Chu Li nodded. Deng Lu's gaze wandered on the two's linked hands. He chuckled and said, "So it's true. Miss Sun and young Master Chu really are a couple. I'm sorry for being impolite." He was slightly annoyed, but had no intention of breaking up the couple. He only felt that he was unlucky to be a step behind. Sun Mingyue lightly said, "I wonder why you're looking for me, young master?" "I'm Deng Lu. I've heard that Miss Sun has a peerless beauty, so I'm here to have a look." Deng Lu fist saluted and sighed. "Indeed, hearing about you is not as good as meeting you in person. Miss Sun's beauty is peerless and truly amazing." Sun Mingyue frowned and said, "You flatter me, young Master Deng. It's just a body." Deng Lu hurriedly said, "Miss Sun, you're wrong. Beauty is the manifestation of nature. A peerless beauty like Miss Sun is a masterpiece of nature. She's the most precious thing in the world. How can you belittle her?" Sun Mingyue lightly glanced at him. Her cold gaze was like cold water being poured over his head. Chuli could feel Deng Lu's sincere admiration. He suddenly felt that the Outland's way of thinking was completely different from his own world. Their views on beauty were also different. It was no wonder that Sun Mingyue's fame spread everywhere when she ascended. Many young heroes came to visit her. The people of the Outland valued looks more and pursued beauties more. From Chu Li's perspective, it was because they had lived a comfortable life for too long that they valued art more. That was why they had such a strong pursuit of beauty. A peerless beauty like Sun Mingyue was practically everyone's darling in the Outland. She received everyone's attention. Deng Lu looked at Chu Li with bright eyes and said, "I've heard that young Master Chu's martial arts is outstanding. You're the #1 master in the lower realm. I hope you can treat Miss Sun well. Don't let her suffer." Chu Li smiled. "Of course. Thank you, young Master Deng." Deng Lu sighed. "I'm really envious of young Master Chu's good luck. Goodbye." P.S. Son, Mingyue looked at him coldly and turned her head away. She was smart and had a high position. She had seen all kinds of cunning people, so she saw through Deng Lu's trick at a glance. If the scribe's sneak attack was successful and severely injured Chu Li, Deng Lu might take the opportunity to kill Chu Li. If the sneak attack was unsuccessful, Deng Lu would immediately apologize and stop killing Chu Li. In this way, they had also tested Chu Li's limits. Next time, they would be able to target him more precisely, killing two birds with one stone, advancing and retreating at the same time. It was truly a good move. Deng Lu glided diagonally and floated up like a cloud. He arrived in front of the elder and placed his hand on his wrist. He wanted to heal him and take him away at the same time, so that he would not be hung on the stone wall and embarrass himself. Uncle Jing hung on the stone wall as if he was being slapped in the face. He no longer had any face in front of Sun Mingyue. Moreover, looking at Sun Mingyue's expression, she was also an extremely intelligent woman who had seen through his tricks. If he could take the opportunity to kill Chu Li, then it was nothing to be embarrassed about. However, he could not defeat Chu Li, and was beaten to a pulp instead. It was indeed extremely embarrassing. Bang! Deng Lu's palm was bounced off by an invisible force. His expression changed slightly. He frowned and looked at the elder. The elder's face was ashen, and he was barely breathing. In just a short while, he was about to breathe his last. He had turned from a peerless master into a frail old man, like a candle in the wind. He floated in the air and once again reached out to help the elder. However, as soon as his hand touched the elder's wrist, it was bounced off by an invisible and tyrannical force. He could not touch the elder's wrist, nor could he transfer inner energy into it. Uncle Jing. His expression was solemn as he stared at the elder. The elder struggled to force a smile. He was already speechless and only glanced at Chu Li. Deng Lu did not want to beg Chu Li. Suddenly, he quickly struck several palms. Several palm energies flew towards the elder's chest to seal his acupuncture points so that he would not vomit blood again. However, the palm energies were turned into nothingness by the invisible force. Sun Mingyue saw that something was amiss. She pursed her lips and smiled as she looked at Chu Li. She had long known that Chu Li was not someone who would swallow humiliation and suffer losses. How could he let go of the sneak attack so easily? He would definitely punish him ruthlessly. It seemed that it was already effective. She could sense that the elder's vitality was rapidly fading away. His energy was flowing away like a flood from a breached dam. If this went on, the elder would die in less than a quarter of an hour. Bang, 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 bang. Deng Lu pursed his womanly red lips and frowned. He struck the elder several times with an angry expression, producing a series of muffled sounds. The elder trembled a few times, but his back was still unable to leave the stone wall. Moreover, after these few strikes, the elder's mouth was bleeding even more. His aura was rapidly declining. He suddenly stopped and turned his head to do a fist salute. "Young Master Chu?" Chu Li smiled. "Young Master Deng, we'll have to take our leave first. This scribe's injury is not serious. He will recover after a few days of rest. His martial arts might have regressed a little, but he can slowly cultivate it back." As he spoke, he was about to leave. "Wait, young Master Chu." Deng Lu hurriedly appeared in front of Chu Li and Sun Mingyue. He gave a fist salute and said, "I hope that young Master Chu will be magnanimous and spare him this time. Don't bother with a scribe." Chu Li smiled and shook his head. "I was a little heavy-handed, but it's all right. He won't die. The spirit pills of Mount Spirit Wonder are also top-notch. He will definitely be saved. As for his martial arts, He can recover as well. Deng Lu smiled bitterly. I hope that young Master Chu will save him. He cursed in his heart. Looking at Uncle Jing's condition, he was about to die. Chu Li was still lying through his teeth, saying that he would not die. Even if he did die, Chu Li would only say that it was a small mistake, as if Uncle Jing's life was insignificant. Uncle Jing had grown up with him. Although they were master and servant, they were family. How could he watch him die? Chu Li sighed. This Sunming scoffed. Young Master Deng, if it was someone else who ambushed you and wanted to kill you, would you agree to save this person? No matter how strong your Mount Spirit Wonder is, you can't make things difficult for others like this, right? Uncle Jing's sneak attack was indeed wrong. Young Master Chu, do you need spirit pills? Deng Lu knew that it was useless to say anything more. He had to show his sincerity to save Uncle Jing's life. Looking at Uncle Jing's state, he could not get close at all. Chu Li's heart technique was too vicious. His inner energy was constantly destroying Uncle Jing's body. If he did not undo this inner energy, the spirit pills would be useless no matter how good they were. They would not be able to save Uncle Jing's life. Chu Li smiled. I took in a disciple who needs a star stone to calm his mind. Unfortunately, it's a treasure from the outland. I couldn't find it anywhere. Star stone. Deng Lu's long and slender eyebrows twitched. He said slowly, all right, 1 star stone it is. He took out a colorful rope from his inner pocket. At the end of the rope was a star stone the size of a longan. It shone with a deep blue light. It was purer and more dazzling than the star stones he had seen before. Deng Lu broke the colorful rope and tossed the star stone to Chu Li. Young Master Chu, what do you think? Chu Li reached out and caught it.